नमस्कार, आदाब, सत श्री अकाल, a very warm welcome once again. कुछ घंटों पहले हमारा सेशन काफ़ी लंबा चला, जहाँ पर हमने बात की थी सेशन के बारे में भी, and I'm really looking forward to this particular session because uh, I'll be the most क्या कहूँ ignorant या most inadequate in this particular space. उतनी नॉलेज नहीं है, बट जितना पढ़ा है, जितना समझा है, जितना सुना है, और जितना न्यूज़ और मीडिया में देखा है, उसके हिसाब से दिस हैज़ बीन अ वेरी वेरी पेनफुल टॉपिक, स्पेशली उन कश्मीरी पंडित्स के लिए, जिन लोगों को अपने वेल एस्टैब्लिश्ड घर, अपने बिजनेसेस बहुत कुछ छोड़ के आने पड़े. नॉट ओनली दैट, सिर्फ बिजनेसेस और पैसा और पावर को नहीं, families were destroyed. They lost a lot of members, friends, और भी बहुत कुछ चीज़ें हुई जिनके बारे में आज थोड़ी बात करेंगे. But on a high level, why this is even a topic? Why do we even mention that Kashmir India का part है कि नहीं है? We all know and we always will believe Kashmir is an integral part of India, and it will always be. No two questions about that. So, for that, we will have a great discussion, I'm sure. We are just waiting for one of our guests, but we have two very special guests. Both of them are like family, both of them are part of this family as well. We kicked off this special series last week, last Saturday, with Colonel RDX. That's how I like to call him, because not only do we want to set certain right narratives around certain issues, but also raise our voice against certain issues, certain topics. So uske liye we'll be coming consistently. Aaj hum आधा घंटा late hai, but otherwise it'll be every Saturday 8 p.m. When we discuss various topics, various issues, and see how we can help build up, the right narrative around those issues and topics. And then the second guest, who's already there along with RDX, is someone who you all love a lot. You, and of course, I also love her a lot. But more importantly, she is someone who's given a lot of meaning to a lot of topics, especially Sushant related and otherwise as well, and provides a lot of legal guidance, legal support as well, so that we don't go overboard or we don't go in the wrong direction. Someone who's been on the a road warrior as well for us, for running some campaigns. So, of course, Sonia Raina will also be here. And the third guest we are waiting for, he's having some kind of technical issues. So hopefully we'll have Mr. Pandit as well. And we'll try to figure out while we start this. But without wasting any more time, I'm going to have these two people who I talked about on the screen. Jai Hind, Rohit sir, and Jai Hind, Sonia.
Jai
Jai Hind, Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.
Jai Bharat. And welcome once again. While we are waiting for Mr. Pandit, like normally I start off most of these conversations that we have, Rohit. What's one thing on top of your mind, other than the topic that we have right now, but one thing top of your mind right now?
there is one thing which is on my mind right now is that the ability of our citizens to be able to gauge the truth today, and I think that is something which is building up as a narrative in all issues which we see today in the country, right from the case which we had that 2 weeks running with Sushant, right till what is happening in the political realm. People being able to differentiate between the emergency then and what is good for the country in terms of the Twitter war, what's happening around with Pakistan in FATF. So I think the overall awareness is getting enhanced, and that is something which we started off a couple of months ago when I had made a first observation to be how we can devote much on opinion shaping. And I think today we have reached a stage even on social media like Twitter that at least 5 to 10% of youth and the citizen diaspora are able to clearly comment right? I just got a message from Sushil ji to say that this application is asking for some kind of a passport ID to confirm. I don't know where is it gone.
या सो उनको बेसिकली या तो यूट्यूब या फेसबुक के थ्रू ऑथेंटिकेट होना होगा. All right. While we are waiting for him,
Right. Just hope that he joins today. Otherwise, we'll have to do something by next Saturday for him.
right.
Because he's. This is very strange. They're asking for marriage certificate or passport to confirm ID.
थोड़ा ज़्यादा हो गया, sir.
Typed. He says I don't have them scanned. I said you come through FB. Right.
Right. It has to be either YouTube or Facebook. क्योंकि इसको authenticate करना. This is not an open thing, right?
That is why I think I must have gone through either of them only by clicking very fast.
Correct. So.
Right. So let's start, Varun.
Sure. All right.
If he joins good, otherwise we'll make sure that he's there next week along with RPG also. Right.
Right. Okay, you already revealed. Let's not reveal the last name. All right. So I'll ask the same question to Sonia. Sonia, I mean, one thing on top of your mind, anything that you want to share with everybody who's watching, who'll be listening?
I want to just say that let's know our India better. Let's know every part of India better, and what is happening in every part of India is concern for India. So that should be the goal. Now, not only will we upgrade ourselves, but we will come to know our country better, which is our duty as well as a citizen.
All right. Actually, I see Sushil Pandit here, so I'm going to add him as well. I'm glad this worked. So give me 1 second. Jai Hind, Sushil sir. How are you?
Jai Sushil, how are you? Namaskar.
Jai Hind sir. Jai Bharat.
Very well. How are you?
All are doing well, and really looking forward to this conversation today. Thank you for accepting, acknowledging this request. Really appreciate that, sir.
You're welcome.
All right. तो हम अभी बस शुरू किया था हमने normally I asked the guest or the panelist one standard question, and I'll ask that question to you as well. One thing which is on top of your mind right now, anything you want to share before we get into the conversation?
Well, there's a jumble of ideas, but the overriding feeling is that of acute disappointment and betrayal at the hands of our own government, which has been swearing all kinds of solidarity, sympathy, or promises to reverse the wrongs of history, blah, 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 and more blah. All of that and more has now come to a knot because they don't seem to have a about what they are doing, and they're not even keen to tick the perfunctory boxes of carrying a pretense, at least. At least keeping people engaged and hopeful. Even that pretense has been given up. So this has now come to a level of sheer brazenness that they have discarded and dumped, who were in any case too insignificant electorally. And having milked this issue to the hilt, they think that we are not worth even carrying a pretense on. So that's where we stand. I guess we will need to reboot and recalibrate our future course of action,
Right.
and that we shall certainly do.
Got it. I think I didn't expect that kind of a start, but that's actually the ideal start in a way, because the pretense, yeah, आपका जो the anger or the the I don't lack of words, but basically just situation में हम हैं, the state that we are right now. Uh, Definitely there's a lot of uneasiness, and something which people have been waiting for, what, more than 20, 30 some years now, ke ho jayega kuch, that belief in everybody. I think with change of governments, with change of power, with change of a lot of things that have happened in the last 30 plus years, uh, things seem to have been at the same place or same spot. Maybe a couple of things here and there which have gone in the right direction, but I'd like to kind of take a couple of steps back, and I'll start with you, Sachil sir. Basically, I want to understand, as a novice, as somebody who doesn't know the history, can you walk us through that painful piece of our history that has really shaken up the entire Kashmiri Pandits and the Hindu, population there in Kashmir, and then we could lead to the next question as to what has happened in the next 30 years from that time frame.
For the sake of brevity, because it has been done to death in great detail over several occasions, I would suffice it to say that it's been a saga of almost 6 centuries where the Hindus of the valley, who were the original inhabitants and the ones who created a society there, built a civilization which influenced the greater, larger Indian civilizational fabric and nourished it with its knowledge traditions and with its contribution to literature, art, philosophy, religion, aesthetics, theology, grammar. You name a knowledge tradition and it originated there. They were systematically annihilated over the last 600 years because of their own folly of being too open and too liberal to let anyone and everyone walk in and stay there and thrive and accommodate even a pernicious ideology that was intolerant of everyone else except itself. Having committed that blunder, because they didn't come winning a war, riding on a horse, they came there as refugees and then wormed their way into a very core of our power structure and then demolished it from within, and thus began to dismantle what was put together over thousands of years. Running up to 1990, we suffered about 6 major exoduses when we had to literally empty out of the valley. But those do not pain and trouble so much as the last one. One of the reasons you could say is the last one, something that we saw ourselves, so therefore it pains a lot more. But we have very detailed and meticulous accounts of what happened in the preceding centuries also. Why it still pains a lot more the 6 exoduses is that the previous 6 exoduses happened when we were completely out of the power structure. We were the ruled and not the ruling. We didn't have recourse to any justice. We didn't have an army. We didn't have a constitution to live by. As a valley, we were very secluded and difficult to access for most of the country, and also lack of communication, lack of interaction. And we thought that, this was our misfortune. But in 1990, our seventh and perhaps the largest and the most painful exodus was because despite the country being united and not splintered across small little kingdoms at war with each other, despite having a parliament of almost 800 members and an elected prime minister, despite an army which was 1.5 million strong, a population which was 900 million strong in 1990, a Supreme Court and a system to lower judicial press, a free media, academia, you name it. Even the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights, enshrined in our own constitution as fundamental rights, all of it and more was rendered useless when we had to come out of the valley all over again, cleansed brutally, violently. A series of heinous crimes and massacres. Now, this happened as if it was par for the course. This happened with nobody moving a little finger. Now that shows how complex our own system, our own governance, our own political parties, our own political class was with this colossal tragedy. The irony was that we laid a lot of trust in store for these very institutions and these very instrumentalities who completely betrayed us. We didn't realize that this is not to be trusted, not to be relied upon. We need to be self-reliant. We were on our own. We never knew that. We thought we had a mighty nation at our back, and nobody dare even contemplate harming us, leave aside committing a genocide. But it happened. And this genocide took place as a result of our neighboring friendly state of Pakistan funding, arming, training, and legitimizing a jihad precisely to commit such a genocide. Now, I can very well understand why Pakistan does it, because Pakistan came into existence by doing precisely these things through a series of riots and post-riots, post-partition, through a series of oppressive measures to wipe out whoever was left behind in that state in terms of Hindus, Sikhs, Christians. So I could understand, because this was the very nature of that state. What I couldn't understand was my own state being complicit in it by denying it. Till date, there is not even an acknowledgement from my state, from the state of India, by Indian democracy, from Indian political class, Indian Supreme Court, Indian bureaucracy, Indian intelligentsia, India. There's no unequivocal acknowledgement what happened there was a genocide of Hindus. So when there isn't even an acknowledgement, Why to even expect justice? So if you do not know, let me say this umpteenth time over the last several decades that not even a single murder, a single rape, a single abduction, a single desecration of temple or looting of home or burning of businesses, none of the massacres even have been prosecuted, a guilty found and punished, sentenced. Not even one as an exception. It's 13 years. And what is galling is that even the Air Force, who Air Force personnel, including a squadron leader, Khanna, didn't do the murderer Yas Malik, who's a self-confessed murderer. He accepted, he bragged about it in Tim Sebastian's talk at BBC. He said, yes, I killed them because they were the symbol of Indian state. Indian government not only gave him the passport, Indian government lobbied with foreign governments to funded him to US, allowed him to go to Pakistan, got married there, he came back, he settled there, he had children. This school dropout urchin of a lout was treated like a son-in-law by successive governments and prime ministers. He was invited over breakfast, photographed proudly. That shows how complicit this Indian state was with those who tormented us. So we got squashed between two huge states, a jihadi state and a denial of a genocide state.
Right.
The Indian state is obsessed with winning hearts and minds of precisely those jihadis who are out to dismantle it, destroy it. Our parties may quibble and squabble over petty issues, but they have a consensus on this, which is why the policy in Kashmir remains unchanged. Governments have come and gone, prime ministers have come and gone, parties and coalitions have come and gone, but that policy remains intact. And the policy is to win hearts and minds, which is why they keep throwing money, taxpayers' money, hundreds of crores every year to mollycoddle Hurriyat, pay for their food bills, airline fuel, security, and even their expensive treatment abroad. So when we started raising our voices, when we started contesting their monochromatic narrative that raged on for decades, years, I was personally contacted by the high and mighty within the system to go easy, not criticize. And in sheer horror, when I would ask them why, they would categorically say that you are raving and ranting annoys the people who we are out to win over. So forget acknowledging our tragedy, forget delivering justice. They don't even want us to cry aloud. It embarrasses them. And if we had any illusions about this government being any different, they have gone out of their way to demolish those illusions. Repeatedly, time and again. What am I to say? What else do you say? That's where we are.
Right. नहीं, और आपने एक चीज ये भी बोली थी, इसको genocide, इसको वो कैटेगरी देना ही नहीं चाहते. एंड another thing was nobody, जितने भी लोग थे इन्वॉल्व थे नहीं थे, कोई ट्रायल्स नहीं हुए. There has nothing happened around this. Why do you feel or why do you think this has, मतलब ये स्टेट है, क्यों नहीं हुए ट्रायल्स, क्यों नहीं लोगों को पकड़ा गया और इसको फिक्स किया गया?
हाँ, लोग नाराज हो जाएंगे। अरुण जी, आप उनके आइकॉन को अदालत में घसीटोगे, उसको फांसी दोगे, तो वहां का जो पूरा सिस्टम जो उसको कंधे पे लिए घूमता है, जो उसको लीडर मानता है, उसको रेवोल्यूशनरी मानता है, वो तो नाराज हो जाएगा। वो तो अफजल फांसी को अभी तक उसने कंडोन नहीं किया है, उसने तो बुरहानी काउंटर पे आपको घसीट लिया है। आज तक वो तो शहीद आजम था, वो तो मकबूल भट्ट की फांसी के ऊपर अभी तक रिकंसाइल नहीं हुआ है। तो हमारे धोती प्रसाद तो कहते हैं कि भाई साहब ये तो बहुत हो जाएगा, ऐसे कैसे आप मतलब जस्टिस मांग लो और हम दे दें, ऐसे कैसे हो जाएगा। तो ये जितना भी तामझाम है हमारे यहाँ, ये जो लंबी बड़ी छातियां हैं और बड़ी बड़ी बातें हैं, ये घूम फिर के वहीं आ जाती हैं कि भाई साहब आइए ना, हमसे कर लीजिए। और वो हड़काते हैं कि जाओ पाकिस्तान से बात करो, और ये चुपचाप खड़े अपमान का घूंट पी के रह जाते हैं। ये न्योता देते हैं कि आइए ना, आइए दिल्ली, मैं प्रधानमंत्री हूं, मैं आपको अपने कार्यालय बुला रहा हूं बातचीत के लिए। वो तुनक के कहते हैं कि जरा सोचेंगे, हम 4 दिन आनाकानी करते हैं, देखेंगे आना है कि नहीं आना है, हम आपस में बात करेंगे। अरे, आपको अपनी इज्जत प्यारी नहीं है तो ये 125 करोड़ का देश है। प्राइम मिनिस्टर्स ऑफिस इज एन इंस्टीट्यूशन। दिस स्टेट हैज अ मैजेस्टी ऑफ इट्स ओन। आपको अपनी पार्टी या अपनी पर्सनल को कीचड़ में घसीटना, आप घसीटिए, लेकिन आप जिस ऑफिस में बैठे हैं वो मुझे रिप्रेजेंट करता है, वो इस देश को रिप्रेजेंट करता है, वो एक इंस्टीट्यूट है, वो एक कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल मैकेनिज्म है, उसकी अपनी एक मैजेस्टी है, उसका अपना एक रुतबा है। ठीक है, उसको आप, उसकी नाक, उसका मुंह आप कीचड़ में नहीं रगड़ सकते, ना किसी 2 टके के इंसान को रगड़ने दे सकते हैं। इतना ख्याल कीजिए।
बिल्कुल, मैं कहूंगा कर्नल भी यहाँ पर हैं, एंड सोनिया जी, आई मीन आई कुड सी दैट वो एक स्मर्क, एक स्माइल जब जब सुशील पंडित कुछ बोल रहे हैं। तो प्लीज फील फ्री, डोंट वेट फॉर मी टू, आपको एक अपॉर्चुनिटी के लिए जहां पर भी आपको लगे, प्लीज प्लीज जंप इनटू इट।
यस वरुण सर, सबसे पहले तो मैं सुशील सर को बोलूंगी, थैंक यू फॉर बीइंग द वॉइस ऑफ मेनी कश्मीरीज। वी एडमायर यू फॉर दैट. I have been following you. Being a Kashmiri Pandit, I feel unfortunate that I belong to this state. I have been criticizing the actions of the Prime Minister and our Home Minister on many stages. And whenever we raise a question, we never find a solution. We have always been asked questions back to us. And that gives me pain. That makes me feel more saddened that I feel like a stepchild of this country. Not only my elders, but many families have lost their loved ones. And as you rightly said, there was never a trial. We have never got a closure. So if this government who came into power promising us that we will be taken back to our motherland, we will be given that respect, what is that what changed within? And restoration of the statehood in J&K will benefit whom? कश्मीरियत सिर्फ कश्मीरी मुसलमानों के लिए है क्या? हम हिंदू कश्मीरी पंडित लोगों के लिए कश्मीरियत कहाँ है?
सोनिया जी, आपने बिल्कुल ठीक कहा। आज ये सवाल हमें खुद से पूछना है और उनसे भी पूछना है जो आज भी ये भ्रम पे बैठे हैं, जो आपको और मुझे कहते हैं धैर्य रखिए, धैर्य रखिए। अभी देखिए एक बड़ी ग्रैंड स्ट्रैटेजी इवॉल्व हो रही है, जो जूम सेशंस में, टीवी स्टूडियोज में, प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंसेस में नहीं बोली जा सकती, लेकिन ग्रैंड है, बहुत सोफिस्टिकेटेड है। जब हम लोग बचपन में फोटो खिंचवाते थे ना, तो हमको बोलते थे कैमरा की तरफ देखो, अभी चिड़िया निकलेगी। वो पता नहीं कौन सा कबूतर निकालने वाले हैं किस टोपी से, मुझे
सुशील
समझ
जी,
में नहीं आता
हमारे
कि ये कॉमन सेंस की
हमारे
बात है।
जी, हमारे होम मिनिस्टर अमित शाह जी बोलते हैं कि हम आपको रिलीफ देते हैं, इतना रिलीफ मिलता है, पंडित इतने रजिस्टर्ड हैं। मैं
हाँ,
तो इस शर्म से मर गई कि आप जाके पार्लियामेंट में ये सब बोलते हैं, आपके स्टेट्स भी करेक्ट नहीं होते, आपको ये भी नहीं पता है कि जो रिलीफ कमिश्नर है आप उससे डेटा कलेक्ट करके वही बोलना है आपको पार्लियामेंट में। आई फील दैट माई गवर्नमेंट हैज फेल्ड मी एज अ कश्मीरी पंडित। आज हम कहाँ स्टैंड करते हैं? वी आर लाइक फुटबॉल, यहाँ से किक, यहाँ से किक, वो गवर्नमेंट आई उसकी किक, ये गवर्नमेंट आई इसकी किक। तो ये जो इन्होंने हमको ये भगवा पहन के हमको जो बोला था कि आपके मंदिर, आपकी जमीन, आपका घर आपको वापस दिलाया जाएगा, वो वादे कहाँ गए सर?
है ये प्रॉब्लम है। इनको लगता है कि मतलब हर चीज जो निपटाई जा सकती है, इनको ये दे हैव बिकम एंड दे वांटेड टू एंड दे हैव very consciously become an election winning machine. A political party's raison d'etre, the very reason for existence, is to win election, into power, and then stay there, perpetuate themselves into power, and do whatever it takes to do so. और हम सोचते थे अपने idealism में that power is actually means to an end and not an end in itself, but they have turned that principle on its head. Seeking power has become an end in itself, and for that, if you have to lie 100 times, if you have to sell your grandmother for it, so be it.
Sushil sir and
There is
Adiyek sir, I have a
absolutely
question.
no limit.
Yes sir, correct. तो आपको क्या लगता है ये जो परसों हुआ, is that not a stage set for the Pakistan dialogues to be resumed? What are your take, both of you? What is your take on that?
Rohit ji, I thought you were part of the panel and not the audience.
I was listening very intently, Sushilji. Firstly, thank you for speaking your heart out, and I'm so glad that you have said all that, and it is something which should be taken a note of, and I'm quite sure it will be taken a note of in any which case. Now, let me come on 2 or 3 issues, Sonia ji. Uh, I don't think so. I don't think so that if you have invested so heavily into a non-talk business, that you can suddenly go to a talk so politely, and there's no reason to talk to Pakistan in any which case. The internal situation does not demand any talk with Pakistan at all. Insofar as the government is concerned, and what one has been following, because initially few debates when they happened after Balakot, and I think self and Sushilji were on the same panel in the same TV studios, and there's a lot of hope. And the hope was that, okay, they have talked about areas, zones where Kashmiri Pandits would return, and that I think has taken the longest time to fructify till today. And I surely do acknowledge that part, that whether the intent has dwindled, or whether like Sushilji is saying, there is some cat out of the bag which will be pulled out, and when. So let me just break it down to some logical conclusions what we can garner. The first is, this government has initiated a lot of things as per its manifesto, right? And if you see the manifesto unfolding, and whether you take it to the last level, which will finally come as probably the UCC, maybe this term end or beginning next term, you will appreciate that at least they've been focused on certain issues. And it is one issue, which is the issue of the resettlement of the Kashmiri Pandits with the pomp and gaiety which they announced it, which has not happened. So rest, if they have set 10 missions, one can actually gauge the government or 10 missions. If you leave this issue out, and the other 9, they are making some progress somewhere. They are meeting a lot of hurdles. They have a lot of problem at hand to assuage the feelings of the other side, and which is happening on ground as well. A lot of protests and everything is happening. I see the major challenge of this government in this term also has been the lack of numbers and trying to do things in terms of ordinances and trying to push the thing the way they wanted to push as per the requirement. And while they were successful to create 370 abrogation quite successfully, I think that was the first step necessary to get into mainstream. And thereafter, we went on to divide the state into two union territories with the hope of JNK coming back as a state, which they are now talking about on only after delimitation. And my understanding is that Sri Panditji will also probably bear me out and correct me with the number part there. Once you have this delimitation, it's a precursor for any statehood. So the statehood is not coming anytime soon based on any number crunching in haste. So delimitation has to happen. And if you now see the population versus the graphs of constituencies, I think there is a way that about six, seven of these shifting seats would come to the Jammu belt, so to say. They will be denuded from the Kashmir side because they were heavily weighing there. The government itself has experienced when it had to go into a uneasy marriage with the other political party for a long time there. And my reading that time was that the marriage was not to only get the numbers, that alliance was more to also get a whiff of what is happening in that part of JNK that time. And I think the intelligence network, if one is aware of, has garnered a little more knowledge than what was known to this particular political party, which is currently in governance. They didn't have that clue because whatever was manifested was happening from the years of the year since our independence, and nobody had a knowledge. Like Sushilji has said, for the kind of complicity of the government that time, or for the longest time, to start with this major exodus and 1990s kind of a mayhem which happened for the terrorist. I don't take his name actually. Sushil Pandit know I take nobody's names as terrorists. For the terrorists to kill the Air Force personnel and still live a life like he described is something which has been baffling one for a long time until I went to that state for the first time. And as a military officer, I realized that even the hands of the military at some point of time in our history were tied back. And I will take your attention to kinds of beheadings we used to have and hear on TV shows. And Varun, you must have also heard of it that time. And there was a case in which there was an officer rebuked for launching a trans-border similar attack to cut off the heads that side. And short of getting court-martialed, he was only saved because the military leadership actually delayed any action against him that time. So one has been very wary of this entire conundrum of what's happening, especially in Kashmir, not only militarily and the jihad of the Pakistani side, which me and Sushil sir contest vehemently together also as well. But I agree with both Sonia ji and Sushil ji that there needs to be more done, because you see, person like Sushil ji and Sonia ji I met only today, he had a lot of energy in him when I met him 2 years back. He has the same energy, but there is a lot of despair, which one notices, and the despair is not unfounded. The despair is very well founded, because if your inaction is happening after a second term coming into power, and if no timelines have been given and probably has been spoken to directly by powers that may be or decision makers that may be to go slow, I think that's not the way forward. You cannot go slow on the most brutal kind of a genocidal act in our own nation. One is not comfortable. I'm as a citizen not comfortable not having the right answers. I'll tell you the other flip side. The army operated in 1990s under ASPA that time, and Sushilji is much more aware, and he will agree with this. What I'm saying is that in the last about 6-7 years, you had cases being put against the army personnel. Some of them retired, some of them now much elder in age. No clue about what happened. The incident happened 15 to 20, 25 years back, and the FIRs are being put in the face today by people who were kids that time. So I don't know who's grooming them, who's funding them to get these legal cases going against our armed forces on one side to prove something about the human rights. On the second same breath, the same level of people, Pakistan and others, are trying to put a lot of infiltration of terrorists for the longest time into our country. And while the three of us, and maybe Varun, you also from the other side, stand together against that, I'm quite myself not convinced that why should not there be a concrete map or a timeline for actions. If the government is waiting for a full scale majority, in both houses of parliament for that to take place, that could be a thing. If they are waiting for the delimitation to happen in the favor of the numbers they think are going to be correct for tomorrow in the political spectrum, I think that's worth a wait. But in any which case, once you've announced colonies and everything, and then I had somewhere in the same circles which he's talking about, that there was an apprehension that if you put the Kashmiri Pandits, they will be sort of in a fortified place, only guarded by the RR and other security forces. So what's the point of it? And these kind of debates have also happened, about the resettlement part. And I think it's a good thing that we begin at some place now. We have been far too much waiting, and this aspect, whether you talk to Shil Pandit ji, or you speak to Anupam Kher, or you speak to Ashok Pandit ji, or today Sonia ji, one has heard even Aarti Tikku. They've all asked for at least justice to be done. And I'm not too sure, Sushil ji, how far we can go back for the legal system to acknowledge and take count, because I understand and you understand that the legal system is based on the FIRs put, the cases put, and I'm not too sure how many cases are at which stage today to be taken up. So I won't call it a government decision to take up those cases, but I would certainly agree with the both of you that the government of the day, after making its intent clear, a, to resettle the Kashmiri Pandits in a phased manner in JNK, it has to achieve it. Probably, like you were saying, they don't want to tell you and me that how they're going to do it, but I better place my bet on it to say that they are and they should be focused to do it, because if they fail us, and especially by the next term, because I think that's the time they're looking at, in my understanding, it will be a humongous kind of a failure on part of our governance to be mainstream with the JNK as a state, and that not will augur well for even our democracy. So I think a precursor after delimitation should be as to set the stage for the Kashmiri Pandits to have their way back into the homeland, which we belong to them for the longest time. And I think all support, whether it's the support through people like you, Varun, to spread the message to the diaspora otherwise, or people like on screen, Sonia ji and Sushil ji. And Sushil ji, I will only say that, I understand. I mean, I can't even, have that gumption to tell you that what you should do or not do. But certainly, one thing I always believe in, that just keep that hope alive a little bit more. And I will be on the same street with you to ask the questions when the day comes. And I just hope after all this, we speak in the future today as well, there will be some hope, even in young blood like Sonia ji, because she also comes from a particular viewpoint, and I am 100% in agreement, because if it comes on you, actually, then only you believe what the angst is, right? It's not currently on me, so I can, very well draw a center line and talk about this topic. But if it happened to my family, if it happened to me, it happened to me myself, then obviously that angst is much more deeper. वो जो घाव हैं, वो घाव इतने मतलब जख्म है, उनको कोई दवाई ठीक नहीं कर सकती. It is only when you get this entire community back as a whole, when they start off again with the smiles and seeing each other there in the same place, can you do it? And my point is, a generation has gone by. We've already lost a lot of time. Now whom are you going to settle there? There may be a generation beyond this today who, being a Kashmiri Pandit, may not be quite okay to go back to Kashmir. He will say, I'm better in Delhi, Mumbai, or New York or US, right? So even that is a particular thing. How do you, and if you delay more, there'll be no connect left. The only problem is you have to maintain this connect. And if this cord is today broken like an umbilical cord, it has to be stitched back deep and in time for at least the elder generation before they go to the graves of whoso is on earth today, to be able to see that day. If that does not happen, at least people like Sonia and Sushil ji and us should be able to see that, okay, then justice has prevailed. I think more is a call from that side to be able to pursue. And I personally would always encourage, anybody on the side of, say, the law or governance who feels aggrieved, to not give up, because I think this cause, Sushil ji, if you permit my saying, the citizen connect with this cause is quite high. I'm not too sure about the previous governments. I'm not too very sure about what's going to happen in the future with this government or the other. But I am quite sure that at least today, the sense of awareness with which people speak about this issue, which was actually dead in the period of 2000 to 2015, maybe people never spoke about it much. People were, not even focusing on this. At least, there is a kind of a awareness to help in this cause, and it is for us to structure that help. I can't say that I can comfort you only by words, right? That will not be enough. If you want me to write somewhere, if you want me to approach, and I'm quite sure you got more approach than me in any which case with the current government. But if we need to speak our minds, if we need to collectively go ahead, I think aim should be to get many more minds together, not necessarily only Kashmiri Pandits, but beyond that scope, to be able to revisit this issue. This issue which is caused, no, I mean, if it has caused so much of pain, and I can feel from here what Sushilji is currently feeling, and it's quite a powerful sentiment which you expressed actually, Sushilji, today on this show as well. And while you have only recapitulated in a very short way that what has happened, it is the most disheartening kind of a incident or a series of incident which has happened in a country, and we can't go back in time to that time. But I should dare to say that we should make at least something out of the future, in which, if not you, your next generation, if not us, our next generation, and if God is willing, then at least with our generation, we should be able to put some mechanisms to make sure that we are back to some kind of normalcy. So I would like to hear from you, Sushilji, also very directly and bluntly, that what happened to that part in which when the government said that they're going to create those habitation centers for Kashmiri Pandits, and they also actually talked on some forum and some publications one read that certain areas are being earmarked. Where is that story today? If you can tell us, and also people who are listening in, so that we have a better understanding that at least on that one particular aspect, and then we'll pick up all the threads that where we are today, and then what we need to do. I think we can extend this particular session also a little bit, but it will be better to hear from you
Yeah.
one by one. So the first point is, where are we on that resettlement of the Kashmiri Pandits? Where is the talk reached, and what is your sense out of it?
Yeah. Yeah. No, thank you for a very thoughtful intervention, Colonel Dev. I've always admired you for clarity and candor, and you've raised some very important points. I'll certainly answer the question on where do we stand in terms of rehabilitation. But let me address a point that you earlier raised about ability of our law and criminal justice system
Right.
to respond to the heinous crimes that were committed against us, and why do they still remain unattended and unaddressed. I'll give you two examples. One happened more than 9 years after our exodus in 1990. This happened at the Adriatic when Yugoslavia was going to pieces. At that time, if you remember, from Kosovo and from another place called some Herzegovina, there was an exodus, an ethnic cleansing. And I remember even the dates between 20th of March 1999 and 10th of April 1999. These 20 days, NATO planes took off from their Italian bases and bombed the land, the civilian areas from where that ethnic cleansing took place. No less. That is how the world responded to a certain community driven out of their habitat. And then those names still ring in my head. Milosevic and Kardic, they were tried in Nuremberg-like trials. There was special tribunals set up by United Nations. These were considered crimes against humanity and war crimes. This happened in front of us, and we were wondering, were our lives so cheap and so inconsequential? Did we not matter? Living in the same day and age. The other example that comes to my mind, this is after our exodus. The earlier one was 20 years before our exodus. In 1970-71, when Bangladesh was subjected to and Pakistan army found collaborators to inflict a genocide on its nation, particularly Hindus of Bangladesh. One inglorious part of our history is that we gave a right to safe passage to these genociders with the Pakistan army. We, in fact, even allowed them to carry sidearms after they had surrendered, so that they could defend themselves against any possible attack on them from the civilian population of Bangladesh. They were so unpopular. There was so much against them for their lives. An Indian army guarded them and allowed them sidearms, and then they were let go off free, never tried. For the bestiality had unleashed in then East Pakistan, later Bangladesh. But just 4 or 5 years back, same Bangladesh caught hold of the collaborators. They couldn't catch hold of the Pakistan army generals and officers. They caught hold of the collaborators. They instituted tribunals. They evolved a system of evidence and witnesses. They tried them and they hanged them. Colonel Dev,
Yep.
it used to really be great news. Every time I read in the newspapers that Bangladesh has punished one of its genociders and collaborators. Is their criminal justice system better than ours? Are they a better democracy than us? It's a shame when my Supreme Court tells me to my face that your case is not even worth admitting. Forget arguing. 2 successive Chief Justices of Indian Supreme Court, first Justice J.S. Kehar, followed by Justice Deepak Mishra, who heard the review petition, shamed their institution and shamed themselves by throwing our petition out to consider prosecuting the crimes for which FIRs were pending for decades. You know, Justice Ghulam Rasool Wani, no, not justice, he was a magistrate, Ghulam Rasool Wani, when he gave bail to Bitta Karate, Farooq Ahmed Dar, he wrote in the bail order that I know this man is accused of heinous crimes and I know he committed them. But the state is not keen to prosecute this man and therefore I have to give him bail. He wrote this in his bail order. Can there be more damning evidence of my state's commitments?
Yeah.
When
I
even senior Air Force officers and their lives are not considered worth pursuing for justice, and when the serial killer who said, I stopped coming after 22 people, he bragged about it in an interview to Manoj Raghuvanshi when he interviewed him in custody from Newstrack. This is 80s. I mean, what kind of a system are we living? There is the lack of intent. I do not blame it on lack of legal mechanisms. I do not blame it on lack of instrumentalities. I blame it on lack of intent. You have commissions on inquiry on flimsiest of issues, idiotic issues. Judges given post-retirement sinecures manning these commissions of inquiry. You know, I remember there was Lakhubai Pathak, who was supposed to be a pickle king. He accused P. Narasimha of taking a bribe from him. There was a commission of inquiry because that bribe was, my work never got done and that bribe was never returned. And there was a commission of inquiry and P.V. Narasimha Rao till his death used to, be dragged to the court. Here, An entire community was cleansed in this day and age. There's not even an inquest as to what happened. Nobody's interested. I mean, it is crying shame. There is not even a mention that such a thing should happen. People have concocted narratives and theories that Jagmohan drove us out, that this was a conspiracy to bomb the valley, that there was, a lure of plots shown to Hindus, and they went running to Jammu because they were getting free plots. And there was lure of some great vacation from which they would return triumphant back to their homes. And that's why they went out running. There are strange theories being peddled, and there is not even a single white paper by any government worth its salt. There have been several of them since. All parties, all coalitions, all kinds of ideologies, and all kinds of leaders, big and small, have come and ruled us in the last 31 years. Not one has come out with his version, a government official version as to what happened in Kashmir. This shows, I mean, beyond doubt, I, used to hope against hope. I'm not going to leave hope, certainly not, Colonel Dev, because hope is what one lives by. But I'm going to stop pinning my hopes at the wrong places. I'm not going to live by my illusions anymore. Not against the stark evidence, writing on the wall. I'm still not going to be a fool, despite monumental evidence thrown at my face that this is not going to work. So we are going to find something else that will work. We are going to work at some other solutions. We'll keep working. Now, when it comes to what you said was the grand plan of creating some secured enclosures. And, I think this was not even thought through with some elementary common sense. First and foremost, we kept saying that unless you acknowledge what happened and unless you deliver justice, you cannot expect the survivors of a genocide to go back, think as if nothing happened. We just lost our way, and now we are being ushered back into some kind of a secure enclosure, like the like of which you find in, the reserve forests you have for some extinct species. So we are verge of extinction, as you said, another generation, and we won't even know who we are and where we came from. So before they go extinct, create a sanctuary, as it were, and then put them in there with some barbed wire and some guards, and ensure some kind of livelihood so that they don't die of starvation, and then keep them in those enclosures as some reminders of what there was in Kashmir for centuries but doesn't exist anymore. Now, sorry, that is not what we think is the solution to the problem. We are not going to be reduced to museum pieces or some extinct species that needs preservation and pity and some kind of doles to live on. No, sir. We're quite capable of rebuilding our lives, and we have. Whereas I think more than need to go back to Kashmir, my country needs me to be in Kashmir, because if
that's very well said.
If that state, that land doesn't have a patriot who unequivocally holds the tricolor and claims it to be land, and with pride proclaims his identity as an Indian, India has no business being there.
Very.
What will India do without an Indian who proclaims himself with pride to be an Indian? And I did so without preconditions. And that was the reason I was driven out of that state. And how are you going to put me back there in those zoo-like enclosures? No, sir. I need a part of that territory of my own. We need division of valley. We need a Panun Kashmir where we'll go back and rebuild our community and guard it. Earlier, we couldn't because we were spread thin. We were in the minority of 1, 2, 3 households in a cluster of 100, 150, 500. And we were spread thin and we didn't know what was coming. Now, when we will go prepared and we will go with our pride, our self-respect, our dignity intact, and we will go with a promise of delivering consequences of any such misadventure ever again tried on us. We are not going to just disappear in the dark of the night without a trace. Not anymore. Not our future generations. And that will be ensured only when you try and hang these genociders by the nearest street pole. Unless they meet the consequences of their actions, you are paving the way for future genocides. Unless you reclaim our looted property, our lands, our homes, you are going to leave that incentive in their hands to try another genocide when we go there. So, instead of putting carts before the horse, first and foremost, acknowledge what happened there to deliver justice. Then look at reversal. If you look at reversal first, then you are actually somehow get rid of this obligation that you seem to be burdened with, that I have to put Hindus back in Kashmir.
Yeah, that's correct.
I'm not going to let you shirk off this baggage so easily, so cheaply. You cannot burn the candle at both the ends. You cannot be winning hearts and minds of jihadis in Kashmir and at the same time telling me that I am your friend and I am standing with you and I'll be with you all the way through. No. We are not going to be the sandbags of your perverse secularism in Kashmir. We are not going to be a piece of your heart and strategy in Kashmir and be a dike to hold back the jihad which is now threatening to overrun the rest of the country. Sorry, you cannot use us for experiments anymore. We are not going to be your bunker in Kashmir. No.
Right.
Right. Sushilji, I just that Varun, let me just, now I can understand a little bit more.
Sure.
So let me just stitch a few pieces and let's see how the stitching comes through.
Sure.
The first is, Sushilji mentioned that the intent is not there. I would go a step further, Sushilji. I will say for the largest time, there was complicity and connivance in what happened. And I may be absolutely off the record and I may be, dragged to some court tomorrow morning. I don't care. But let me say, because if one goes by the history and if what one has read in many accounts, published or unpublished, there is a very deep sentiment today which acknowledges that when we had the partition, right? Actually, those three people on top that time who came to, govern India, Pakistan, and Kashmir that time as a state, they had a lot of linkages, common linkages, which can be construed and it should be construed in a way to say that they created their own fiefdoms to rule in the years to come. If that is the start point, if that is the start point, and if I apply sheer logic, it also says that all three locations should be happy to rule and survive. So while the other state was created out of religious connotation as a state, it went on a different philosophy, and now it is paying for it. The other state which was created, it found a lot of leverage to do what it did to the Kashmiri Pandits that time, to cause this exodus and this genocide. And I'm quite sure it couldn't have been possible in all the denominators you mentioned, right from the polity to bureaucracy to military and the prowess you had at that time. Because if you could fight a war in 71 and nail Pakistan on East Pakistan, obviously you had enough gumption and enough wherewithal to stop this to happen when it happened in the 90s. So it was complicity that it did not happen, right? And unfortunately, our constitution or the parliamentary system is such that certain actions have to be approved by the executive at least. After the 75 emergency, I'm quite sure the judiciary also was quite a little, in the doldrums and not been able to pick up the right gumption to challenge things the way it is doing today, right? On everything, suo moto. So I'm quite sure if suo motos didn't happen that time, Sushil there was a high degree of complicity in the entire system, which led it to happen. And the reason could only be that one governance figure on the other side of the border was happy what was happening. This side was happy doing whatever it was doing here. The third side was also now much more happier by being able to get a foothold and a expansion the way it has come about. And then when I came to that question of rehabilitation to ask you, was also my point, because when this was announced that time, actually, Sushilji, between you and me, I was actually quite baffled. I said, how are you going to create this kind of a structure which will look like a camp, right? And put people there where they will have no freedom to move around and be normal again. So you can't have a creation or a recreation of a system without normalcy. So is it a good idea first to go on a camp and then expand? It is same like sitting today in Delhi and tomorrow going to Kashmir, right? It is same. It is a 2 hours flight. You reach there, 1 hour flight. You reach there. So why go into a camp into the same area, right? So that was the question in my mind when I was serving in the army, and I said probably there's something amiss here until there's a grander plan, and I couldn't get the grand plan that time in any which case. Today also probably I would have got only 10% of it. Then 370 happened suddenly, and I said fine, maybe 370 from all the logic given, right from 370 will get normalcy, more opportunities for people, women, and everything was talked about. It actually opens a window in which there will be an exodus of people into Kashmir. It is not going to be a structured thing that today we will send Kashmiri Pandits only for the next 3 years. It may not happen like that, but it will be a little more than a wave of exodus happening back into Kashmir of people of all varieties and sections of the society from India itself, whether it's an industrial development, whether it's an investment happening there, anything coming up there. And I'm quite sure that could be the way in the thought of the government as well to get the normalcy through that route rather than impressing upon the camps. Because when they came on that wave, it is my understanding limited, in the political sense, that that kind of a signaling was made, which is considered today to be a noise. That the noise was made that time that we must go into Kashmir and get the Kashmiri Pandits back. And once you've said that, today the angst is more because you're not able to achieve it. So that roadmap is unknown. The roadmap is certainly not clear to people like me and Sushil ji or even Sonia ji or anybody else, and especially from military and the Kashmiri Pandit side, because militarily also there is a deep connect when one sees this atrocity, because military mind is trained not to have any atrocity put on your own people and citizens, right? And basically it is from the other side. But once one has uh, um, dive deep into this particular issue, one understands that this angst, which is genuine, needs a plan. And my understanding is that once this 370 is rolled out in the way it is, and I'm quite sure there's going to be no contest of the 370 anymore, probably, the government is going to go through the delimitation plan. We should see some hope coming in for a little normalcy to wield in. How they twist the numbers of the electorate in terms of constituencies to give that edge, which is again my feeling, a political inclination of the government could be to give that edge and make it a little more palatable and equitable, so to say. And when you try to make it equitable, the chances are that the factor of normalcy will only get enhanced. So that is my outlook currently in what's going to probably happen in the next few years. If it doesn't happen, one would be still so sad, like sorry, just Sushil is today. But I think that should happen. Now going from this particular line of where it started from, you know, uh, he mentioned about Azmi
Karandev,
Logo
allow me
and
an interruption here.
yeah, please go ahead, please,
Allow me a small
please.
intervention here. I was
Ji, ji.
equally hopeful In fact, I was excited. I was hugely delighted when Article 370 was dismantled, and we thought that finally the Indian state has picked up the gauntlet, accepted the challenge, and is now declared a war on jihad. And this business of winning hearts and minds and throwing concessions and making exceptions for them, that business is over. Now it is only movement forward, and slowly and gradually, even if it takes a few years, even if it takes a decade or more, even if it is not me, my children, we will see the light at the end of this tunnel, long tunnel. And this is the end of almost, say, 29 years, 30 years that we said we have waited so long, we are willing to wait even longer. But frankly, what has put paid to all those hopes and what has really disappointed me is on 5th of August, when you do these things, you make these grand announcements, converting the state into 2 union territories. There itself, you show the signs of weakness and tentativeness by saying that, hang on, this union territory status isn't necessarily going to be written in stone. We can restore the state back. The enemy starts to smell this tentativeness in your mind. You know, in our system, in our federal system, you don't make and unmake states so casually. It's a very thought through, deliberate decision. And you have a long haul. By converting to union territory, you've taken over the security responsibility of that territory on your own hands. And you're so willing to give it away in a short spell. Don't you understand what kind of a war are we facing in Jammu and Kashmir? I thought, chalo, this was a verbal sop. Maybe they do not mean it. Last meeting, they're seriously contemplating it. Number 2, you talked about others moving in gradually, the demography normalizing itself. What was not allowed for more than 70 years will now happen, and through normal organic human traffic, we will have more conducive demography in the state of Jammu and Kashmir, Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir, if you please. But you know, on 31st of March 2020, in the middle of a lockdown which was announced on 23rd of March, on 31st of March, our Home Ministry issues a gazetted notification which says now there is a class of citizens in the state of Jammu and Kashmir who will be called permanent citizens, and only those qualify who've been living there for 15 years. You have barely dismantled, only on paper, the constitutional barriers to movement of rest of the citizens from India into the state of Jammu and Kashmir. And you clandestinely reenact that huge wall, a Mexican wall as it were, to prevent that movement and to again re-privilege the existing majority in the state to hold on to these privileges. And as if that wasn't enough, these so-called permanent citizens who are entitled to a domicile status will have a monopoly on all the jobs in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. So where will the people move? What for? If they don't even have access to jobs. So what you're doing is, in effect, you have gathered all the kudos and all the applause and all the shabashi from the entire country for showing the guts to dismantle 370, and then quietly begun rebuilding your bridges. The same establishment in Jammu and Kashmir, again making concessions and again bringing back those proposals that existed under 370. Number two, you screamed from the rooftops when Pakistan and China raised an harangue all over the world
Yeah.
about Kashmir that this is our internal matter. You have no business poking your nose into it. Mind your own business. I thought that was brilliant. But within 2 months, in August, you did this. In October, you had 28 MEPs, members of European Parliament, brought into a conducted tour into Kashmir to seek their approval certificates when your own parliamentarians were returned from the Srinagar airport, not allowed to step into the valley. I mean, what are
Very
you
good
trying
point.
to do? Bending over backwards, seeking approvals. Number three, you had completely rejected and discredited existing cabal of politicians who were playing footsie with jihad, who were actually complicit with them, who were releasing them, advocating for their bail, giving them concessions, giving them compensations for being killed in the encounter. Do you remember? Burhan Wani's family was offered compensation for Burhan Wani's killing in an encounter. These were the politicians. This Mehbooba Mufti, publicly as chief minister supported by BJP in Mumbai, said, we want participation in CPEC corridor, defying the central government's declared policy that we shall not be part of it because it violates our sovereignty in Pakistan occupied Kashmir. She was embarrassing us day in and day out. Even 3 days back, she hectored the prime minister publicly to talk to Pakistan. And we had to humiliatingly swallow all that and roll out a red carpet for them. You know better than anyone else. You actually castigated them from the floor of parliament for all their crimes. And you are displaying weakness. I would have waited with enormous patience and perseverance for decades if I had seen the policy and the action on ground going in the right direction. But neither the policy nor the action on the ground is in the right direction, sir. I'll give you just one example. We could blame it on Abdullahs and Muftis when they were ruling the state. Now it is BJP's proxy rule. The lieutenant governor is the former cabinet colleague of the prime minister. You know what happened 4 months, 5 months back? There was a guy in Handwara district who was the former district president of BJP. His name was Wasim Bari.
Yep.
He had 12 security personnel assigned to him as his PSOs. His house was barely some couple of 100 yards from the police station. On that fateful day, none of those guards were there, and 3 armed terrorists come to his house, kill his father, kill his brother, kill him. Okay? Now, this is their way of telling the government in the center and in the state that we can pick our targets at will and we can do as we please with them at the place and timing of our choice. Do what you can. Now, I can still accept this as some kind of a possibility in a terror-infested, jihad-infested territory. What can we do? We cannot provide 100% security to everyone all the time. I can understand this. But guess what happened after this? These 3 men in the same family, Wasim Bari, his brother, and his father, were denied graves in their local graveyard. No Maulvi came forward to offer their namaz-e-janaza. And what does this government do? Because it doesn't want to annoy anyone, they call for a JCB, dig 3 graves in their own orchard and bury them there and call a PSO to offer Fatiha for their graves. Now, this is no Mufti government, this is no Abdullah government, this is Modi government in Kashmir. If this is your response to killing of your own people who stick their neck out for you, and if this is what they do to Muslims of Kashmir just because they are part of BJP, and this is how BJP deals with it, 400 of Muslim BJP workers in Kashmir Valley today do not sleep in their homes. They are to be kept in safe houses. If this is what you have achieved, then what will you do for the Hindus of Kashmir? How will you safeguard them? Your priorities are different. You are on a strategy to win heart minds, backwards, roll out red carpets, take insults with a grin and carry on. Their bravado and their courage and their commitment, I am afraid, needs a reality check now. Their actions, their plans, their policy, their pronouncements. I mean, it's so pathetic. I asked a question, why wasn't a Kashmiri Hindu representative in the day before yesterday's meeting on 24th? What kind of a signal are you sending to the world that we are no stakeholders, we don't matter, our issue doesn't matter, that we could be swept under the carpet, that we are not on the agenda? I mean, what are you trying to tell the world? This is your best leverage in Kashmir. Every time somebody pointed a finger at you for what happened in Gujarat, you would dish out the Kashmiri Pandit argument. And what did you do to Hindus in Kashmir? You go all over the world defending your human rights record by pulling out Kashmiri Hindu card. This is your biggest leverage in Kashmir, and this is what you do to this leverage. So when I asked them, why did you ignore us? Why did you completely, throw us under the bus? They say, no, but this meeting was called of only the political parties and those who were the leaders of those political parties. Little do they realize that their lies can be caught. There is a gentleman called Muzaffar Hussain Beg. He came out of the meeting and he said, I do not belong to any political party. I was part of PDP, I left PDP. I haven't yet decided to join whichever political party there is to join. So I am independent. So why did you call him then? In any case, that you will call only political parties is a criteria you evolved. It is not mandated under some constitution or some Supreme Court direction. These criterion are in your hands. You decide who to call, on what criteria to call, and how to get them qualified. And if you think that Muzaffar Hussain Beg could be called, despite him not being in any political party, then what stopped you from evolving a criteria where we could have qualified? After all, you are not here to serve criterion and formalities. You are here to send a message. If it was an exercise in political propriety, about restoring democracy, about restoring normalcy in Kashmir, then what kind of democracy and normalcy and secular order are you going to put together in Kashmir without Kashmiri Hindus? What kind of a farce is this? I can't understand. So they are muddle-headed right now, Colonel Dev. I wish I could share your enthusiasm and your trust and your optimism. But everything that they do points to the contrary, and I would be foolish to ignore all that. It is 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. They have no clue who they are dealing with and what they are going to. What kind of an outcome are they working towards? I would like to know. Let me address the last issue of You said there is delimitation exercise going. We have been warning them from the rooftops that your delimitation exercise is based on 2011 census, which is dated, and not only dated, it was a rigged census. And the only evidence which is so overwhelming to nail that census is that it gives Valley a larger population than Jammu, whereas Jammu has more voters than the Valley. Now, how can you sustain this dichotomy that Kashmir has more population but lesser voters, Jammu has less population but more voters? It was obviously a rigged census. Now, if your delimitation is based on such a rigged census, you are going to reinforce the status quo, not alter it. And it is stupid to go by that census when 2021 census is happening right now. Why not wait for that census and use those figures which are latest? But they won't listen because they are here to assuage and to placate jihad in Kashmir by saying, we will make sure nothing changes on ground. Reduction of 370 is only cosmetic. It was only to play to a political constituency. It was only to tick a box. With such an attitude, what can you expect from this dispensation? They are burning the candle at both the ends. And they'll end up burning themselves in the process.
Yeah, Sushilji, I
I'm
quite
done.
agree. When you started off with the narrative
Sorry,
that when the
1 minute.
370 was enforced, and you said that you were a little shocked that why did they make that concession at the beginning to say that they will relook at the statehood. That exact thought came to one's mind that time also, that because even if you wanted to do that, why should you declare it upfront at that time? That was something which is not
Absolutely.
probably in the, even as a diplomat, you don't
It
tell the other
defies
country what
common
your next step is
sense.
going to be, right? So that came to my
Yes,
mind, and that was something which was sticking that time because one was that time listening in, and I said this could have waited actually.
euphoric.
Yeah, you should have waited for it. You should
Absolutely.
have just done
Absolutely.
your deal, and then when the time came, you could have taken it ahead. But this last part which you talked about, the delimitation part, I think there's a lot of merit in what you're saying, and I think that needs to be pushed because you can't go by 2011, and especially when one is on. And I'm not too sure because the right noises of the last week by that lady Ranjana was only coming up after a long gap, which one heard about the delimitation. So I think that's one area where we need to push. We need to push this theory that your delimitation should be on the correct facts and figures. And I don't know how you are going to push it as an individual or as a society. But I think legally, probably, if there's a scope to challenge that census and make weight, and I'm quite sure the government, if even if it's not to your and my full liking on this particular topic, maybe they will delay it. That is my hope. My hope is not that they're going to rush into it. So it's just that thing, and they have said that delimitation proper. But I think they should be more than aware of in fact what you have just said. They should be aware themselves that they should not be
Of
base
course
it
they
on the
are.
past. So I would be quite worried in case they take it as a decision post haste right now to kill that delimitation part. They should not do it actually. So let's see where it goes on that count, because it is basic common sense. They have constituted that committee only now, and obviously it should not be going. I think they're buying time. They're buying time because they've been in too much of resistance kind of a thing from Shaheen Bagh to the farmers rally. They don't want any more chaos to probably happen in the next year with the
Precisely.
COVID on, right? So I think they are just buying time, and I think the buying time also entails that they buy the time for delimitation to be done in a proper way which suits their agenda in the future. Otherwise they will, like you said, lose their own narrative there in the game, and that's not what they're going to do actually. I mean, by whatever they are doing, I don't think so they're going to be pretty dumb like that they will let this opportunity go what they have tried to curate themselves. And I think it is going to play up the way you are thinking in terms of the future of this delimitation. I think what you are saying is what the government is thinking, but they are not saying openly in so many words.
I hope
And I
so.
just I just hope it will not happen like that. I'm quite sure they're smart on that part at least,
So
because
But
their stated
Colonel
position is
Dave,
very
I
clear.
don't have the luxury of presuming. We don't have the
No,
luxury
I
of,
understand. I understand. I
you
understand.
know,
I, I'm not presuming. I'm just playing the devil's advocate in the sense that it stands to logic for a government which is doing small parts. Like for example, you saw that on some newspapers or some social media, a couple of temples revived, right? And they have not used any normal level there. Revived by military intervention. The military commanders are sitting and doing havan there. So while people were laughing about it, that what's the military doing, but I'm quite sure the intent is playing out, and I'm not too certain if they're going to give up, because understanding the system, because even if you're sitting in Delhi today in powers of corridor, the problem has been for the first term at least, and even second term, very marginal effect has taken place. Is how do you tackle with the old tank in terms of the bureaucracy and people like that who run the state, and you know the way the bureaucrats run the state, right? In the country itself, and it's a challenging job. It's not so easy. It's not so easy to get things done. One goes to a lot of places these days to talk, and one gets a feeling that unless you revive the bureaucracy, and that is to be done over a generation, there is very little change you can make in this country. Same is the case with Kashmir. The old mindset, the records, the evidences, the drowsing of evidences, the way it must have happened actually. You see today the corruption cases, the kind of evidence burning which has happened. Similarly, when it was a state complicity to get what was done in 1990s against the Kashmiri Hindus, I believe, a lot of these bureaucratic channels would have been awe of that decision and supported it. It was absolutely Azuri at the highest level happening, and people could not go against the mindset of the regime in those times, and it happened. But two thing or three things which we need to probably keep alive, and I will just request you to keep them alive. The first issue is the legal standpoint. I do not know personally what is the legal standing of the current cases which you talked about Justice Deepak Mishra and all, but they need to be revived. I don't think they can be killed as a case. Even if it's a case in which you don't have evidences or your team does not have evidences, I think as a structure, like an inquiry or something into the past, something needs to be propagated through the government to come to a conclusion and get a closure. And closure is not about a case being solved. The start point of this particular inquest itself will be a sort of a closure in this nature. People are identifying that folly which has happened under our own nose as a government. It is not. It may not be this government. It was some other government, but we have to be very sure of what has happened in the past. And I think you and everybody else currently, and people like me also, owe it to our country that this facet of truth which is hidden and buried and put under the carpet needs to be brought out, needs to be spelt out. And we can't compare, certainly, Sushilji, we can't compare Herzegovina with our country, because that was the intent of two nations. Here, there is a complicity. There is a tussle on the world stage to call it a dispute. And for the longest time, there have been both sides calling it a dispute, seeking resolution, right? For the longest time, without either taking any action on the UN SC resolution itself, none doing anything whatsoever. But at least it's now a stop. So at one point of time, it has been told that Kashmir is an integral part, and now shut up and stay to a side. We will do what we feel is necessary. We don't need a third party intervention or mediation. So I think that's a good start. And that is where the hope is still lingering. Personally, if you ask me, if you were to take Kashmiri Pandits and put them in a camp, I would say don't do it. I would rather say that the mainstream must follow as one country, as a unification process, and Kashmiris should get their own lands and whatever property they held there back to them. The mechanism should work towards that. It can't be that simply you go there and you're given a small parcel of land and say, now you settle here. That can't happen. It has to be that what you own should get back to you. What was snatched should be taken back, and that is where the intent of the state must come up in the future. And that is something which you must keep alive, and we must keep alive as a team, probably, to say that these issues don't get buried. Because whether it's social media, whether it's a court, or whether it's seeking a meeting to progress it, but I don't think so, Sushilji. I know you must have met people and got disheartened. I will still request you, because there's a lot of energy in you, at least I see, and that is the reason why I always was fond of you on television debates. You must keep this issue. It's, yes, it's hurting you, but in military they say that when in adversity you are, you need to take out the right punches at the right time, and that is very important. The second issue which you made about that Mr. Beg being there and the others not being there, I think there's one more point which you need to popularize and propagate, actually not popularize, propagate in the media and everywhere else for this to count. I don't know how the media reacts to it, but at least write about it. At least be a little more forthcoming with your views, and that is the way you're going to steer a sort of a I will not say a rebellious movement, but at least a movement which empowers the government to rethink again on certain issues. It's a very critical issue. Today the topic of the debate, as per Varun, was actually to talk about Kashmir being an integral part from the Pakistani side. But today we have deep dived into the angst of the Kashmiri pundits, and that was the reason I requested you finally also just to join us, because I wanted to hear the story threadbare. Because in all debates we have gone through, we have actually been on the same team and going to thrash the Pakistanis. But I thought that since this is a long discussion, at least we will understand much more as young people on a platform like this, to be able to take the right message. Because today on the show there may be youngsters who actually didn't know about the Kashmiri pundits, except reading an article probably or being told once in their lifetime.
True.
And that is how something dies. Memories fade in our country. The memory is so short sighted. I was complimenting Varun the other day for you know SSR case burning for 1 year, and imagine a genocide
Hmm.
buried deep and never evolved. And whenever people like you are talking about, there are 15 bureaucrats trying to tell you, don't go there because there is nothing there. Don't go there because there is no evidence there. Don't go there because it's anti-establishment currently. Don't go there because we are planning a bigger thing tomorrow morning. So all these can be the views, but suddenly I will not call it a struggle, but coming together and seeking the truth and a closure on that particular unfaithful kind of a day, or an era, has to come up in our country. And that is where I request you, Sushil ji, matlab, you have to have that element of hope and zeal and the ability to press
Of
on.
course.
Otherwise, if you give up, I'm telling you, your next generation won't even know where Kashmir on the map was probably. That is the irony of the whole thing if it happens tomorrow. So people like you, people like Mr. Ashok Pandit or Arumam Kher or Sonia ji or Aarti ji or whosoever I know of, you all need to be much more alive. And I will give you one more twist, or a suggestion on it. You take it with a case that, okay, you didn't call us for that meeting, you made a mistake. Please write and be public about it to say that we need to be on the table next time. Demand it. Because unless it's a democratic process, right? It is 100% your right and our right to demand all stakeholders. A meeting is not convened. There's no SOP on Kashmir that who has to be called, right? I'm very sure about that, because all kinds of meetings. If you could speak to Hurriyat,
Hmm.
which was half a terrorist organization, obviously you could speak to anybody, right? But in this case, and in,
Hmm.
in fact, these people on the garb of getting the protection from the state have actually gone unnoticed, unchecked, and I won't be surprised if they have pumped in cash and weapons into the valley on their own in the last few decades. Highly possible. These people from the cars in Delhi to the Pakistani embassy going back to Kashmir unchecked would have done all that. And that is how it propagates. But let me come to the other side. The Indian armed forces, at least in the last 1.5 years, which one knows of the statistics currently, have eliminated much more internal so-called OGWs and sympathizers or whatever whosoever picked up arms. And that is something which we are doing in a very discreet and a blatant manner against the terrorists as they are. And that softening is required, because once at one hand you have done 370 abrogation, on the other hand, if you kill all these terrorists who are there to create nuisance value, then the projection of the balance of the citizens to move on is a likelihood in peace. And that is why this game, like you said, you are willing to wait for 10 more years, but you want to see that hope fructifying. I would say that you keep that hope, and with that hope, if you are not sure about the timeline of the government, or if we are not sure of the timeline of the government, then we should collectively start egging on as per a timeline to make things happen. So there may be a thought process in your mind that this should happen first, this should happen next. In my mind, it may be some other routine or sequence. But unless we project that sequence or those ideas to the government and keep it alive as a discussion point, I'm afraid that your next generation is going to feel more disheartened, by looking at the disheartenment which our generation currently has. We can't let that happen. And that is my small request to you, because you are a man who can make that difference. Because there are many people who have been very sublime. They have not even spoken about it. There are many Kashmir Pandits I know of who don't even speak about it. They have resigned to their fate. There are many people who may just not go back to Kashmir even if the option is given. I know of all those kind of sections also. But you and your like ilk is the correct community, which has that angst, that heartbreak, and it needs to be stitched. And you need to help yourself and ourselves firstly to be able to get it on the right track. I mean, I will just for the sake of repetition request you that you have to lead this in a way, and just not get disheartened by your exposure and hearing something which is to the contrary to your aspirations today. It may just happen the way you think. It may happen a little delayed format, but I would just request you and beseech you and people like you to be on the track, to be able to not let this divide happen. If you have a fear of it turning back by three steps back on a particular aspect, it is your duty and our duty as a citizen to make sure that it is called out. It does not happen. We have to do it to whatever level, including challenging it in the legal domain if required. Because at certain points of time, I also appreciate that certain governments, which may have the intent, may not have the tools to do it themselves unless they are helped. And that help can be propagation of a narrative, that help can be even legal cases, which then the government is able to take on. And that angst which you were talking about, Wasim Bari, I mean, it couldn't hurt anybody more to see somebody flying the national flag and dying under it. I mean, that is something which, if you have felt by, say, 90%, I also should have felt more than that, being a custodian of that flag. And it's very much hurtful. It's not about which party he belongs to. It is about a person who respected the Indian flag has died a death which he did not deserve, and his people did not deserve, his family did not deserve. This is something as a point which hurts me still, and one and you reminded me there, and it brought in a little bit of emotional quotient in many citizens today. And when we interact on WhatsApp media, believe you me, the army men today in service are not comfortable seeing those sites. They will go out of their way to do something if they can help somebody in that. And that is probably the reason why many of the people are being given some kind of a security with the security forces to ensure that it doesn't happen. And politics aside, politics can go any side. Today, one party with the other party, whatever. But as long as the human strain is understood, the human stress is understood, I believe it is our onus as individuals and citizens to keep this alive and to be able to curate a path in which we have that hope that it may happen in the future. And that is what I request you, Sushilji, because if you give up, I mean, I'm quite afraid
Yeah.
that there are very little people left who will actually carry on with this requirement to seek the truth and justice in the case. The
Right.
legal part, one is not competent,
No,
but I would
giving up is
request you
not an option.
that yeah, there can't be with such travesty of humanity, with such
Not an
travesty of
option.
your previous generation, the current generation. You actually owe it back to the country to make sure that this justice is done. And I'm quite sure there are many things under the carpet in our country. You have heard of cases when politicians get involved in a case, 80, 90 evidences, people who are going to depose there in the courts are killed. There are incidents which happen to them, and nothing comes up. So I'm not going by the gloomy part of that side of my country. I'm going by the positive side. At least you're fighting. At least there is a fight left. Otherwise, if there is a no fight, then the ground is open for the jihad to prosper the longest time possible hereafter. So there are
Yeah.
constraints. Sleeping with the enemy. People were very critical of this government, and I was in Baramulla that time, and people said, "What the hell is this?" And I could not fathom, because I was not a political inclined guy that time or even now. But logic said that this is a domain in which a particular novice entering there has got no clue. The novice has got an agenda to sort out that state in the best interest of the country. So novice has got some punches to throw, some bits to swallow, and some plan to execute. So in that, the novice says, "Okay, let me form the government. At least I will understand the internal dynamics of the state, how things function, how the bureaucracy, how the siphoning of money is taking place. With the previous governments were pumping three times the requirement of the state into the country, into that state. Still, money was getting embezzled. the people of the Hurriyat and the other parties, their children, their London houses, everything was happening at the cost of the exchequer. So obviously the government wanted to get a handle on that. That's common sense. Whether it did or not, I don't know. Whether the purpose was that, I don't know. But that was the logical thing to say. I don't know the devil, so let me make the devil a part of me and make sure I understand how the system of the devil works. And that is not bad politics. That is good politics. But the outcome should come, like you say, because if all that is the right noise, the outcome is something which is still, putting that iota of doubt, or maybe more than iota of doubt today, that what's the future. And I believe that common sense says wise, this particular party currently which is governing has got a lot at stake in so far as restoration of the Kashmiri Pandits is concerned, because it's a community by which they have a large vote bank to go ahead in the future. They have to make sure that the Kashmir issue is dead and buried in terms of international forum. They have to make sure that whatever they dole out as the entitlement to the poor and the farmers and everybody else is done to this state, because it has to come mainstream for the development angle. So if you see these 3 4 key parameters of this government, they cannot fail on that, because if they fail on that, like you said, they're going to axe their own feet in any which case in that state. So I don't think so that should be the aim of the government, or any government or any strategist from that point of view. And the strategy can be to mellow down on some count, to give a wrong signal, maybe to give a wrong signal into the wild, to let them hope. And just be clear, maybe that time, 5th August, like you mentioned, there were too many other pressures internally happening in and around Delhi. So they made a mention, right? Statehood, we'll see. Maybe they have a mind for statehood after the proper delimitation, getting the numbers correct, leaving the POK seats currently outside, the Kashmir and the Jammu balance correct. Maybe they have that in mind. Maybe you or me currently expect that to happen, but we are not seeing it happen on ground, and so we have a view. But I believe if they were to leave everything back to the days of the yore, then they wouldn't have committed a bigger blunder, on that governance of that state. I don't think so. That's where they're heading to. I think that there is a little bit more of ideation which they have, which we may not be privy to. And I will only request, people like you and Sonia ji and everybody else to support. And support does not mean say yes. Support also means to give the correct impetus, even if it's negative to some dispensation, to enable it to do something. And that is how probably it may work. So I do not know how big a society you can form yourself, or you are currently in, Sushilji, but I would surely like you to draw more hands into this. And the hands may not be only Kashmiri Pandits. There can be people, sane thinkers, nationalists and citizens who want to get to the roots of that problem and the solution in the future. And let's build this narrative. Let's build this narrative, because one remembers, I think 2 years back, you sent me something on a media like change.org, something like that you sent to me, and you told me to go there, and you actually told me that I should go and do that only if it if it's okay by me, something like that you wrote on WhatsApp that time. And I think I replied back to you, done. And obviously it is something which I think as well. So the cause is same. It is not a different cause at all. The only difference is that you have felt a personal pain and a deep hurt. I have not felt a personal pain there. But let me be very candid, that as a citizen, the pain is enormous. The pain says that we must have the truth there. The pain says that tomorrow Kashmir should smile. Like my example, when I said, if Varun will bear me out, he put out this small ad tagging you, me, and Sonia ji for the show. I made a few comments there. And one of the comments is about the Kashmiri Pandits, right? And it's not a statutory kind of a compliance to a particular, requirement. I made on my own volition. And I strongly believe that the day has come to make sure that the voices count towards this cause. We need to steer the correct sentiment to this cause. And the correct sentiment always is not the government, because government has got its own process. But if we start with the sentiment and build in more numbers and citizens into the sentiment, I'm quite sure the government will be enabled or pushed either way to toe a particular line into the future. So that should be our endeavor, and it's not a small issue. By no margin, this is a small issue in which you probably would think that who will come in and participate here, right? We need to keep this issue alive, and I will only beseech you for one last time that let's be very positive and hopeful, and let's draw the line and conclusions in our own selves and groups first, to push it as an agenda and to get it done. And that is where I request to Sushilji, because you can make that difference. It's very difficult to expect from the next generation, because they are
Yeah.
they're being groomed in a different environment. They actually don't may not have the entire cause in their mind, but you have it still there, and you owe it. You actually owe it to the Kashmiri Pandits and the citizenry of this country, to make sure that you are heard, to make sure that the voices are heard, to make sure the injustice which has happened, but a closure is achieved, and to 100% ensure that you are participative in the future of JNK, which is going to happen in the years to come. That is my request.
All right. Before you
Thank
answer, or before you say anything to Colonel, there are a lot of questions, and I want to be very mindful of everybody's time, including yours, Sushilji. So, if you could excuse me, I'll put up certain questions. Maybe you could combine your answers and respond to them accordingly. सबसे पहले मैं इसी से शुरू करूंगा. ये मदन के दो क्वेश्चन हैं, and I'm gonna add both of them together for you. One is, why can't both Pandit community and the retired armed forces be relocated to Kashmir? That way, former can build their lives while the latter can offer protection. The second question, which is an add-on to that, now that US is withdrawing from Afghanistan and Taliban appears to be gaining control, how will this impact Kashmir?
देखिए, armed forces, retired officers and jawans and Kashmiri Pandits and Hindus from all over the country should go live in Kashmir is a no-brainer. It's a common sense question, because if you need to make the demography of Kashmir less oppressive, less monochromatic, more plural, more inclusive, this is the only way to normalize the demography there, which was vitiated 31 years ago by expelling all non-Muslims. So that has to happen. But it occurs to you, it occurs to all patriots in the country who can even have a modicum of common sense. Why doesn't it occur to our government? You cannot just pick your hold all two trunks and start marching towards Kashmir and say, now where do I put them down, and start staying. In a state where terrorists pick up their targets at will and kill, where elected sarpanchs, MLAs, MPs, ministers cannot roam free among their own constituents, where 400 workers of BJP today have to live in safe houses. They cannot go back to their homes to sleep there in peace. What do you think? Is this possible unless government decides to make it happen, facilitates it? But government is unwilling to do this. Their priority. They want to mollycoddle and please and throw concessions at the enemy, in the fond hope, as one of the general secretaries of this ruling party had mentioned to me 3 years back, we will ensure that the same people who are carrying Kalashnikovs today will carry the tricolor tomorrow and say Bharat Mata ki Jai. Good luck to you, man. Good luck to you. But if that is the approach, and if that is what we are waiting for, then there is a play called Onaton Godo, waiting for Godo. We will keep waiting till the cows come home. That ain't going to happen. So, well, these are most sensible suggestions, but our government has different priorities right now. They are busy experimenting. And these experiments have been on for the last 3 decades at a considerable cost to this country. In the 90s, our community was told, now the 90s have happened, let's go back home, things are normal, and went back, and in Vandhama, 24 of them were killed lined up and shot, including a 3-year-old into which an entire magazine of AK-47 was emptied. Just to remind that if this is what you contemplate, then this is what is awaiting you. This is what will happen. On 26th of January, they did this, on the night of 25th of January, to tell this great republic that this is what they are capable of. What happened? Nothing happened. Then again, a few years down the line, they said, come on, now things are normalized. And the massacre of Nadi Marg happened. Again, a couple of dozen hapless, unarmed women, children, old men were lined up and shot. So we're sick and tired of these experiments where you do not change the variables at all and you expect result. I mean, this is not just foolish, it is monumentally idiotic. When what your inputs do not change, but your outputs are expected to be different. So these experiments go on because every time a government becomes wiser, a prime minister learns, his tenure is over, the new one comes, and he thinks he is uniquely blessed to try all this all over again and succeed. And prime minister after prime minister, government after government, party after party is repeating the same circus, rolling out the red carpet. You can Google and you will see pictures of Hurriyat conference leaders walking into the prime minister's house for a breakfast, meeting with Atal Bihari Vajpayee, meeting with Manmohan Singh. One of our prime ministers, Narasimha Rao, in Burkina Faso, all the way in Africa, from there proclaimed, sky is the limit. You at least ask us and then see what all we can deliver. See what we can deliver to you within the Constitution of India. Another Prime Minister, Jamhuriyat, Kashmiriyat, इंसानियत के दायरे में सब कुछ हो सकता है. उनके मुंह से ये नहीं फूटा कि कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन के दायरे में होगा जो कुछ होगा. इस देश के बॉर्डर के दायरे में जो कुछ होगा वो होगा. ये नहीं बोला. जमहूरियत, कश्मीरियत, इंसानियत. खैर चलिए, मतलब वी हैव बीन वेरी वेरी जेनरस. एक और प्राइम मिनिस्टर कहते हैं कि एक हाथ में कुरान और दूसरे में लैपटॉप. अरे यार, जिस हाथ में पत्थर है उसमें आप लैपटॉप दोगे तो आपको कुछ अलग रिजल्ट्स मिलने की उम्मीद है. प्रॉब्लम हाथ के पत्थर में नहीं है, प्रॉब्लम दिमाग के जहर में है. उसको आप एड्रेस नहीं करोगे तो जो हाथ में पत्थर नुकसान आपका पहुंचा सकता है उससे ज्यादा नुकसान हाथ का लैपटॉप पहुंचाएगा. आप गूगल करके आईईडी बनाना कैसे होता है सीखोगे और उसके बाद एक नहीं 50 लोग मारोगे साथ में. क्योंकि जिस हाथ में पत्थर है उसमें जब आप लैपटॉप दोगे आप उसकी लीथैलिटी को और ज्यादा शार्प एज दोगे. ये कॉमन सेंस की बातें हैं. अगर आप ये जुमले के लिए भी कह रहे हैं, पॉलिटिकल इफेक्ट के लिए भी कह रहे हैं, तो इसका पॉलिटिकल इफेक्ट क्या होगा जरा ये तो सोचिए. क्या इंपैक्ट होगा इसका. तो इशू हमारे पॉलिटिकल लीडरशिप में एक रियलिटी चेक की है. आपके जितने भी रिकमेंडेशन हैं, सजेशंस हैं, बहुत अच्छे हैं, लेकिन आपकी डिस्पेंसेशन वो करने देगी तब ना. तो दीवारें खड़ी कर रही हैं, वहां 15 साल खड़ा कर दिया है उन्होंने और उनको सारे जॉब्स के ऊपर मोनोपोली दे दी है. क्या करेंगे वहां जाकर आप? वहां रहने जाएंगे तो क्या, कैसे रहेंगे? तो ये सब चीजें भी सोचने वाली हैं। You are asking for a short answer, Varunji. My problem is you
नहीं नहीं,
explain things in greater
That's good.
detail. Anyway.
which is very good, right? क्योंकि मैंने जैसे बताया था शुरू होने पे सेशन पे, right? आज आपको सुना, कर्नल को ऑब्वियसली हम बहुत सारे टॉपिक्स पे सुनते हैं, बहुत देर से सुन रहे हैं, क्वेश्चंस मैं सुन रहा हूँ, लोगों के क्वेश्चंस, लोगों के सजेशन सुन रहे हैं, और आई थिंक जब कर्नल वाज एक्सप्लेनिंग, राइट, मैं उसको लेके चल रहा था बिल्कुल जैसे वो ना मुझे पॉइंट कर रहे हैं कि ये आप जैसे लोग जिनको नहीं पता, जिनको ये नॉलेज चाहिए, उनके लिए ये वाली एक्सप्लेनेशन बहुत जरूरी है। ये हम बहुत I'll be, with both my hands raised right now, I'm saying I have been a culprit myself. I never bothered. मैं वर्ड बहुत स्ट्रॉन्ग यूज कर रहा हूँ कि हाँ, मैंने कभी बॉदर भी नहीं किया कि मैं इसके बारे में डिटेल में पढ़ूं, ये पेन को मैं भी फील करूं। जैसे कल ने बोला, राइट, आई कुड रेजोनेट दैट फीलिंग है, इमोशंस हैं, पर वो वाला पेन जो है, जो आपको है, जो उन कश्मीरी पंडित्स को, जो सोनिया जी को है, वो पेन नहीं है, बट वो इमोशन फीलिंग थी। पर आज इसके बाद, इन इन चीजों के बाद, और ये आप जो अभी दो चार और क्वेश्चन है जिनको मैं जरूर आपके सामने रखना चाहूंगा, विच गिरिजा जी विल एक्चुअली पुट फॉरवर्ड, वी रियली नीड टू आल्सो फाइंड कि हाँ, व्हाट इज द सोल्यूशन। जैसे इन्होंने अभी एक क्वेश्चन लिखा हुआ है, व्हाट विल बी द नेक्स्ट स्टेप्स टू एडवाइस द गवर्नमेंट टू गेट कश्मीरी पंडित्स देयर राइटफुल प्लेस। दूसरा, पिछला वाला क्वेश्चन में एक और पीस था कि अब तालिबान का कंट्रोल हो रहा है ज्यादा, तो हाउ विल दैट इम्पैक्ट। ये जो डिटेल्स, जो इंट्रिकेसीज हैं, इनके बारे में थोड़ा आप, इवन इफ इट्स अ एलैबोरेट आंसर, आई डोंट माइंड, आई एम हैप्पी टू हियर।
नहीं, वरुण जी, ऐसा है, उन्होंने तालिबान वाला सवाल पूछा था, 30 साल
हाँ जी,
पहले भी यही हालत थी। सोवियत्स को भगा दिया था अफगानिस्तान से, तालिबान रूल आ गया था, और कश्मीर में नारे लगते थे कि रूस का लर्जा है, अब कश्मीर की बारी है। तो रूस को अफगानिस्तान से भगा दिया था, तो सारे के सारे जो अनएम्प्लॉयड मुजाहिदीन थे, उनका क्या करना है, तो उनको अब कश्मीर के मोर्चे पर भेजना है। और जो सरप्लस, मतलब आर्म्स एंड एम्युनिशन डॉलर्स पंप किए थे यूएस ने उस कोल्ड वॉर की हाइट में, वो तो पड़े हुए हैं, तो उसका अच्छा इस्तेमाल क्या होगा? पाकिस्तान ही उसका कस्टोडियन था, तो चलो साहब, अब कश्मीर वाले मोर्चे पे चलो। नाउ दैट tragedy is repeating itself as a farce. We've been that tough phase, and our sons and our brothers, through an enormous price of blood and lives, steered us clear of that disaster. They would know what Kashmir went through in the early 90s till mid 90s, what the then governor Gary Saxena did to pull us back from that disaster, how Narasimha Rao sanctioned 57 battalions of RR, and they were raised to defend Kashmir, and they were drawn from different parts of army. And most of the officers I meet from our defense forces with pride say, when they meet me, we have done our tenure in Kashmir. We've spent time in Baramulla, we've spent time in Anantnag, we were at Gurez, we were at Kandahar, with such pride, with such sense of fulfillment. They say, we've gone there and served our motherland. But in the absence of political clarity, today I keep asking, do you have on a piece of paper a list of things that you want to achieve in Kashmir? What are your objectives? Are you objective driven, or are you managing a problem from one day to another? Are you just addressing a crisis, throwing water at fire like a headless chicken, or are you working to a plan? I'm afraid there isn't even a small white paper in this country that tells us what is happening in Kashmir. Somebody describes it as alienation. Somebody else describes it as some kind of a wayward youth in the absence of employment. Third person says that there is some uh, electoral malpractices led disenchantment in our democracy. Another person says that, you know, we have been very uh, very casual about the promises made to different political leaders from time to time. There are all kinds of theories floating, and we are blundering our way through this. Now, Afghanistan issue is come full circle, and you may soon see Taliban sharing power with the existing regime till the time they become strong enough to throw this regime out and take complete control of Afghanistan. Well, it might happen. But what is your answer to that? Is your answer to start talking to Taliban and try and win their hearts and minds now? Is your answer start talking to Lashkar and Jaish and see if they could be weaned into being a little more merciful? The point is, if Farooq Abdullah and Mehbooba Mufti are your answer to restore democracy and normalcy in Kashmir, then Jaish and Lashkar should be your answer to make LOC impermeable. Then ISI should be your answer to collaborate with in order to manage terror in the subcontinent. Then by the extension of same logic, Nirav Modi and Mehul Choksi should be your answer to manage our banks better so that there are no defaults on loans. You're training cats to guard milk. Good luck to you for this experiment. I mean, what is your response? Is I'm asking. For that, you need to first put the diagnosis right on the paper. Look at what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, what your compulsions are, what your enemy is like, and therefore, how are you going to strategically, respond to this challenge? I'm afraid there isn't a coherent response yet. We had, just last point I'll make in response to this question, and that will give you an insight into what we are dealing with. We talked about bureaucracy, we talk about our think tanks and our strategic minds. There is a gentleman who ran our premier espionage agency called RAW. His name is A.S. Dullat. A book called Vajpayee Years. Please go and read that book. In that book, he says that if we can throw money at the separatists in Kashmir, then what is the need for a bullet? If money can do our job, then why should we need to fire bullets? And he's supposed to have sold this theory to successive governments, and that's what we did. Now, a commonsensical question that you may want to ask of him is, if a man is carrying a gun and you give him some more money, what will he do with it? He won't buy a cake and pastries and come and share with you over a picnic. He'll buy more guns and more ammunition. What do you expect? You have only postponed a problem and raised it to the power of 10 when it comes back and hits you. You've bought temporary peace. Just because your tenure is a few more years left and you are keeping scores of terror incidents like you keep cricket scores, then you can go and sell this story to your uh, you know political masters that see there were so many incidents of terror last year, so few incidents of terror this year. In my tenure, I have managed terror better. There were so many incidents of stone pelting in this month, so many incidents now. Array, if the tap on these issues is in the hands of the terror machine, and you pay them money to switch off the tap or make it on a slow burn, then they will do it to please you, to get some more money out of you. You are collaborating with the thieves. And he indeed collaborated. He co-authored a book with Asad Durrani, who was the chief of ISI. Can you imagine this happening anywhere in the world? Where chief of RAW co-authors a book with chief of ISI called Spy Chronicles. This can happen only in our country. And I'll give you another example. When this book was to be launched in India International Center, Indian government, the present Indian government, denied the visa to Asad Durrani. Okay. Now, Asad Durrani could not come, so he joined through a video conferencing link. And you know who all were in attendance? Former Prime Minister, former Home Minister, former Foreign Minister, former Defense Minister, the who's who of Lutyens' circuit, and the who's who of Indian political class. Nobody saw anything amiss. That your implacable enemy that has been bleeding you white decades, first in Punjab, then in Kashmir, masterminds horrendous attacks like Mumbai, like Uri, like Pulwama, like Parliament attack. You are at the receiving end of this blood and gore, and you go ahead and co-author. I mean, can you imagine? Does it occur to anyone sane? This is how our political class has been subverted from within. And we go along as if we are living in normal times. And we expect a policy which is based on common sense, which is abundantly displayed in the questions that are asked. But I am at a loss to respond because we are dealing with a state, we are dealing with a system that doesn't have that common sense. It's not common with them. Another question, sir.
Sorry, I was on mute. Girjaji, you want to carry on the next set of questions?
Yes. Thank you so much. We understand the pain that you are experiencing. Totally feel that we Indian citizens have failed to understand, to exercise our votes properly. First of all, we have elected the wrong government and stood by it. And now today, we are not even voicing in one voice and us talking about it all the time and generating awareness. We are all aware that Kashmiri Pandits have started from sub-zero after they have been thrown out. They have struggled, but not one of them have become a militant. They have earned such a respectful place in the society. We all hold them in high esteem. Now it is high time. All of us have to unite and all of us have to ask this government the right questions and see that it does take action. So please suggest some steps what we as common citizens can do, number one. Number two, if you were part of the government panel to discuss what are the next steps that should be done in Kashmir, what would be your answers and what would be your suggestions? Two questions. What can we as common people do? Second, if you were part of the panel, then what are the suggestions that you would give the government? Thank you so much. I have no words to
Thank you, Girijaji, for your question and your kind words preceding those questions. I feel the first step to any resolution of our crisis and a larger crisis that we face as a nation is acknowledge the genocide in Kashmir.
Absolutely.
Acknowledge
Yes.
the wiping out of Hindus from Kashmir as not a natural calamity like flood or
It is
earthquake.
not. Absolutely.
Don't insult it by calling it migration.
It is not.
Don't normalize it by calling it displacement. Please use the
Yes.
appropriate word, and that word is genocide. It meets with the definition of United Nations Convention on Genocide, 1948. Please go check out, and you will see it meets all the conditions.
Yes.
That's first and foremost, because that is the measure of the sincerity of any dispensation who wishes to even approach to start with this issue. Because so long as you
You mean
keep
to say that there
prevaricating
should be a
about it,
trial?
so long as you keep lying about it,
You mean to say that there should be a trial? There should be an announcement of the trial, and
no,
there
that's
should be a
number
proper
two.
trial
First and
going.
foremost,
Yeah.
acknowledge.
Okay.
So, first and foremost, acknowledge what happened. And what flows from it is once you acknowledge that this was a genocide, then it is incumbent upon you to punish this genocide, reverse this genocide. And therefore, you must institute tribunals, create a protocol of evidence and witnesses, have continuous, relentless hearings, arrive at a conclusion, find guilty, and punish.
Yes.
Unless you do it as a national resolve, be permitting such genocides which are waiting to happen, not in some distant future. They are already erupting as we talk in different parts of the
Yes.
country.
Exactly. We see
And they
that.
are happening because you have played footsie with the genocide earlier. It is the nature of genocide. When you deny
Yes.
it, it replicates. The history tells us. So stop denying it, stop prevaricating on it, acknowledge it, and then what flows from it is prosecute it, punish it, deliver justice to victims, survivors of the genocide. And while you are at it, please, till date, we are yet to find from successive governments, prime ministers have come and gone, there is not even one paper which identifies the problem, proposes a solution, a time frame about it, provides resources or whatever it takes to go for the solution. There has to be a policy on it.
Yes.
You cannot be ad hoc about it. Let be a white paper
Yes.
to which then you are committed. Till date, no government has put it down in terms of their understanding of what they face in Kashmir and what, in their view, is a solution. And once that paper is there, at least in public domain, we can start talking about it, make suggestions to it, make improvements upon it, or challenge its premises. It starts. The process starts. The process is hostage to the fact that there is reluctance to even put pen on paper and build a certain proposition around which an activity can start. So there's nothing, we are in vacuum.
Absolutely.
So if you put together these three things and hammer it relentlessly, we might take our first few baby steps towards the solution. Acknowledge our genocide, deliver justice, put together a policy on reversal of genocide.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. So this is the first step that you're talking to the government as of now, but still that doesn't take the Kashmiris back. This can happen on one side, and at the same time, what can be done on ground in Kashmir so that people can start thinking about going back. Like he said, the colonel was saying, it could be very late by the time all this is implemented, paperwork and people becoming aware of it. On the one hand, what can be done in ground Kashmir?
Yeah, you see, these things needn't happen sequentially till one is over, the second cannot happen.
Exactly.
You can
Yes.
start with the one, even that when that is going on and the second is going on, the third can be started. We can simultaneously
Yes.
go ahead and do it. But today there is a crisis of confidence. There is a PM's package, which was a patchwork solution where some people were recruited and put into state governments on some very stringent conditions. They would run away every time there was crisis in Kashmir because you would kept them in portals kind of camps with barbed wire around them and a posse of CRPF men who were absolutely useless in front of a mob of 10,000 people pelting stones. And those porta cabins would have such big gaping holes because PVC cannot offer resistance to a huge boulder flying at the speed of 80 kilometers an hour. So they would scoot in cars or whichever public transport they could put together or find and run to Jammu. Because these patchwork solutions do not comprehensively address a situation, they are simply, putting some kind of an iodex over a cancerous tumor. I mean, that doesn't work. That doesn't work. So you need to have a comprehensive policy instead of some quick fixes, quick palliatives, some quick painkillers. Well, when painkillers are necessary, they are necessary. That's fine.
Yeah.
But can you imagine those who encroached on our properties are sitting there enjoying it? There are no consequences they face. We very often hear from sections of population in Kashmir, we didn't chase you out, we didn't kill you, we didn't pull the trigger. Yes, they are right, they didn't. There were very few who carried Kalashnikovs. They weren't, in the last 30 years, more than 100,000 Kalashnikovs have been confiscated. Okay. Yet, I can say that the entire population wasn't carrying a gun chasing us out. Fine, understood. But a large number of people are beneficiaries of our expulsion because they simply walked into our homes, our shops, our orchards, our fields, our businesses, our jobs. And they're beneficiaries of this. So they harbor, they support. Want to take away these ill-gotten gains which work as incentives for an encore, a repeat. So unless the state shows that it means business on ground, it won't engender any confidence among who it wishes to take back and resettle. And if they keep trying to win hearts and minds of the people, then it will again strain at the credibility of what this government means and seeks to do.
Okay, true. Thank you so much. Definitely, as the common man, we feel now we don't feel helpless. We understand where exactly the pain comes from. And we definitely will raise our voice, all of us, not just the Kashmiri Pandits, all of us, in all the platforms that we can. Thank you so much.
I'm gonna add here. Archana was waiting here for a while, but looks like she just dropped off. उन्होंने प्राइवेट चैट में क्वेश्चंस डाले हैं. I'm just going to read it to you, both of you. They're addressed to both of you. सुशील जी आपको और कर्नल आपको भी. पहला क्वेश्चन है, in UP there are many rackets were found which are helping Rohingyas to settle in. What kind of threat do you think both Rohingyas are in addition to Kashmir issue? Because एक साइड हमें दिखता है कश्मीर से रोहिंग्यास को हटा रहे हैं, दूसरे साइड वे वही रोहिंग्यास को दूसरे स्टेट में सेटल कर रहे हैं.
Varun, this is a very live threat. The threat is not limited to UP. It's also forcing a big threat to JNK. And how it happened there is something which probably Sushilji may like to elucidate, but I will not. It needs to be curbed right now. And again, the government has made an intent very clear, like we have noticed. But the action on ground needs to fructify. Whether the visit to Bangladesh by the Prime Minister could echo that sentiment, and what's going to happen with Myanmar and other countries through that is something which we need to see and wait also as well. But I'm quite sure this is a very sticking problem. This is again a situation. If you actually see Kashmir also in the valley when you used to be there, even at times these Maulvis and all who used to come there were from a particular sect, and they used to come from UP again. And UP is a state which has actually harbored a lot of intellectual, discontented people who have gone all around the country to spread that hate. It has happened. I've heard those dialects being spoken in various mosques around where I was in the Kashmir Valley, and it's like a tutorial class happening to how to instigate people, and it's a very grave threat, and nobody should take it lightly. I am just not, I can't say I'm not sure. I'm quite sure actually. I'm quite sure the government of the day in UP is going to react to it in a very particular manner, and they should be stringent about it because this is going to be the next big thing, which is going to have a very deep impact, like it's had in say West Bengal today after the elections. If you go by the inputs, which many are not privy to, the people who have created mayhem there are not actually all of them from the citizenship of this country. There are people who are from terrorist organizations of around the border areas there, and they've been able to infiltrate and create this mayhem, and somehow they have prevailed in doing so. So again, like I said, um, it's always a political mismanagement, or I should not say that actually. Sushilji said that twice. I think that political management and mismanagement. It's not that. It is that these political, goons, if I may call them, or vultures, they have their set piece agendas in life. Many of them, not all of them, maybe not all political parties, but many of them. And to achieve those agenda, they are willing to let go of precious lives. It doesn't make a fig of difference to some people, either in conduct or in their hearts as well. And that is the pain point, because if it actually had, if people had humanity in their hearts, that exodus from Kashmir would have never happened. If people had their correct hearts, they won't have facilitated the Rohingyas to come to Jammu. And that is also the intent going wrong by doing so. If people had heart, then obviously there was no business of what happened in Bengal, and still is under the wraps today to happen. If people actually had heart, I'm quite sure our generation would have seen so much of pain and angst in people who are positively inclined to the ethos of this country, like Sushilji and others. And obviously, if people at heart, things which have happened in the last 1.5, 2 years on the name of religion and people dying on issues which are curated out of political intent, which is anti-national, so to say, would have happened. And that is where we are, Varun, unfortunately, today. And I believe that this needs to be nipped in the bud. It's been nearly a year and a half since this problem was identified with clarity and action was to be taken, or a little more than that, maybe. And now, again, I'm hearing a buzz about it, but I believe it's a very big national security threat. And that is why things like, getting that national register going and making sure the citizens are accounted for is very important in a country like ours, because you just do not know who's where. And people have come from various nationalities, settled in a country, illegally. They have got Aadhaar cards, voter ID cards, and it's all, I don't know, it's some kind of a nexus which is not good for our country. And I will echo the sentiments. If you let this happen for your political vested interest, then you will pay the price for it heavily in the years to come. And it is one of those things. If the Rohingyas can reach Jammu from nowhere, I'm quite sure the influx has been a deep-rooted political complicity of some parties to make it happen. And if this government has got any beans about it to undo it, it should be on a path, even if it can't do it in the next half an year, but it should be on the path to ensure no more influx, and what is in should be out. So let's see if it can do so and reach a consensus also politically and be relevant, and let's see how it goes. But my personal feeling is that they need to be kicked out.
All right. और अर्चना ने यही सेम क्वेश्चन
Varun, can I come in here for a short?
Yes, please.
Rohingya started coming into India in late 2011, early 2012. It was around that time that thousands of them, not ones, twos, tens, 20s, hundreds, 200s, thousands of them were brought to Jammu in a place called Bhatindi, which is a reserve forest, which also has an army camp called Sunjwan Army Camp. Colonel Dev knows about it. They were settled. This is a reserve forest, government land, and they were settled there. This Sunjwan Army Camp has suffered 6 brutal terror attacks on our Jawans and their families. Yet, the government of the day, run by Omar Abdullah and Congress coalition in Jammu and Kashmir and UPA in Delhi, run by Manmohan Singh, facilitated it. They couldn't have come traversing 3,500 kilometers of distance, crossing a country in between called Bangladesh, going states, landing up in Jammu, Bhatindi, which is less than 50 kilometers as the crow flies from LOC. So obviously, the state apparatus was complicit in it. The chief minister was Omar Abdullah. The prime minister was Manmohan Singh. And they land up there in thousands. They are given electricity connections, water connections. Some of them pick up Aadhaar cards. A lot of them pick up bank accounts. In a state which was under 370, you could not, even President of India could not buy an inch of land. They were allotted shops along the highway and they started in Burma Bazaar. Now, if the government has changed in 2014 and we are screaming from the rooftops, is it too much to expect at least a white paper, an investigation, a report, some activity to nail this? Who facilitated it? They did not miraculously descend from the skies. There is obviously a system that brought them in. Can you please name and shame people? Prosecute them. There is obviously law being misused, positions of authority being abused. But no such happens. And it carries on. So while our army camp, which was less than 100 meters from where these Rohingyas were settled in thousands in Jammu, came under increasing threat, and similar such Rohingya clusters started erupting in sensitive geographies, in the capital city of Delhi, in Hyderabad. Can you imagine? These are communal tinder boxes and sensitive geographies. Doesn't this government owe it to the country to find out and to tell everyone that this is how it's brought in? We have a refugee policy. But what on the contrary is a complete whitewash, some kind of hide and seek on this issue, passing the buck on this issue. Now, that is what endangers the country more than the Rohingya themselves. Do you please understand this?
Yep.
The nexus between apparent political rivals on each other's misdeeds, even when it comes to jeopardizing national security, threatens this country more than the visible enemies of the country. And these gentlemen, Omar Abdullah and Farooq Abdullah, were worthy guests of this Prime Minister. They should have been prosecuted and jailed for this perfidy they committed 10 years ago. But they are being legitimized and they are being honored at the Prime Minister's residence, and everybody is all ears to hear from them as to how to democratize and normalize Kashmir. Now, this is what makes me mad. I don't know who can retain sanity after seeing this scenario. Thank you.
All right. First of all, to both of you, Archana, who's asked this question, uski battery dead ho gayi thi, isliye she dropped off. She wanted to, say or give a lot of gratitude to both of you. And Sushil sir, आपके लिए एक simple सा comment था. उसने बोला था कि you have really inspired a lot of youth like her, and please continue to, I think conquering to what Kalna was saying earlier, that we definitely look up to. A lot of us look up to you, and she specifically came just for you. To unfortunately her battery died on, and I have to be blamed for it. बहुत देर उनको मैंने रखा. So thank you so much. And उनका एक direct question आपके लिए भी है. Now there are many Kashmiri all over India from north to south, east to west. What solution you think to stop this? Well, and उसी में add on आपके लिए है, Colonel. How do you see Taliban as a threat to India? Because recently they controlled at least 100 plus district in Afghanistan. From last minutes, India invested a lot there. So maybe first I'll go to Sushil sir, आपके ऊपर कि अब बहुत सारे कश्मीर दिख रहे हैं. Please go ahead.
हाँ, ये कश्मीर रेप्लिकेट हो रहे हैं क्योंकि हमने ओरिजिनल कश्मीर को एड्रेस नहीं किया. उसको पलंग के नीचे, कारपेट के नीचे दबा दिया. तो कश्मीर को रेप्लिकेट होना ही था. और अभी हालत ये है कि जब बंगाल में एक इलेक्टोरल कैंपेन की कॉन्सिक्वेंसेस को वहां का कार्डर फेस कर उसको उसके हाल पे छोड़ के चले जाते हैं, तो जब कश्मीर उसकी इरप्ट कर रहा है, पनप रहा है, उसको अपना बोरिया बिस्तर उठा के जाना पड़ेगा, या फिर उसे अपने आप को ऑर्गेनाइज करना पड़ेगा. वहां वो स्टेट की मदद की राह में नहीं बैठ सकता. मुझे याद है जब 1990 में हमारा एक्सोडस कश्मीर से हो रहा था, हम लोगों ने कहा कि बदामी बाग कैंटोनमेंट में हमारी आर्मी बैठी है भाई. फिर हमें समझ में आया कि अरे साहब, नॉर्दर्न आर्मी कमांडर तो जनरल जकी हैं, और जिन आर्मी ऑफिसर्स को हम जानते थे, उनसे पूछते थे तो वो कहते थे कि भाई साहब, जब तक दिल्ली से ऑर्डर नहीं आएगा हम तो कैंटोनमेंट से बाहर निकल नहीं सकते, एक्शन करने की तो बात छोड़ दीजिए. तो सारी इंस्ट्रूमेंटालिटीज धरी की धरी रह जाती हैं, कुछ काम नहीं आता. तो you're on your own. Please take it from me. Everyone in this country has to now fend for herself and himself. Please organize yourself into small groups, self-help groups, self-protection groups. Be mindful of your own threats. Do a threat assessment. Join hands. learn to defend yourself, at least hold on till the help comes. You should be able to uh, fight back and defend yourself for any eventuality. That's all I can say. Don't wait for the state, because state will not come. State has other things to do and you are not a priority. Even if you are their political cadre, you are not a priority. If they could do this to their cadre in Bengal,
Yeah.
then you count for nothing. Please be very clear about it.
All right. And I'm gonna just jump to Colonel for the second part of it. जो वो पूछ
Yes,
रही है सर.
I would just say briefly about the Taliban threat.
Sure.
You should not take it as a major threat now, because since the last Taliban Russian era, we have had enough of security apparatus and border fencing and monitoring of the LC, and somebody has to come on his foot. There's no horseback there, and I believe it's not going to happen to the level of threat we are researching. Yes, once the US pullout happens, they will have much more resources, much more terrorists, foreign mercenaries joining hands to create the cause of jihad. Orientation will happen towards Kashmir, and that way the threat is real. But I don't think so. We're in an era today that we need to fear that threat, because all the routes of ingress which lead are similar to what we have been able to map over the last 2 decades, and we are a little bit better prepared. So I don't think so. There's going to be a mayhem kind of a situation in Kashmir created only because Taliban is now free to act in Kashmir. In any which case, if you see the East African communities outreach by Pakistan on some luring basis to them by giving soaps on the money actually given to it by China to get them on board, is also one more threat which you can look at in terms of that kind of a jihadi movement, foreign mercenaries to be lured to the Pakistani side. That's the only advantage Pakistan has from that EAC part, which most of the EAC nations may refuse to Pakistan unless the offer is too meaningful from the Chinese money side. So even if these two threats combine, you have to enter through the LC only, right? So it will be a threat. The numbers may increase, the number of terrorists may increase, but accordingly, the number of kills and elimination will also increase along the LSC and beyond the LSC. And if whatever we go by the stated commentary and the actions of the last 2.5 years or 3 years maybe now, I'm not too sure if any such incident will be taken very lightly by our country when something en masse is going to happen. So let's wait for that. And I think the messaging to the government is very clear from the intent of the people today is to be proactive to act militarily in such situations. So I hope they will do that. So that is what I think about Taliban currently. They're an enemy too far, but yes, a very big threat in being, which can be tackled for the moment of what resources we have. I mean, I should be more worried about two factors beyond this. Like Pakistan, I don't bother too much these days. One is China along the LSC, and second is this internal rot, which is systemic from the political level through the bureaucracy to a lot of money bags, Bollywood, narco terrorism, money flowing inside to create this mayhem, and that is the cause of worry, which is a deeper worry. Coming back to that small elucidation which was given by Sushilji in the previous question, I also believe that time has come. There's nothing called political necessity, and exposures have to happen, and people need to be actually jailed, not only named and shamed. They need to be jailed. And when the only logic which comes to mind again and again is when you are sleeping with the enemy, actually, is that you have a ulterior motive to seek through that alliance. And maybe if you just take it from the point of view that a lot of leaders today in Kashmir, so-called, I don't call them leaders, I don't give them that khitab in any which case, but I'm just saying because you are saying leaders. So a lot of these jokers there, they are compromised, right? They are compromised as good as some jokers in the hinterland in the country. And maybe the government has got the right handle on them to get things done their way through them. So I hope that is the case, because the kind of inputs, the kind of linkages which has been picked up in the last about 3.5 years, I think speaks for itself. It's not in the public domain, but one is aware to be able to arm twist people to make it look as a process and make it happen. If that is happening, I'll be happy. But if it's what the fear of Sushilji is, if that is happening, then I too should be wary as a citizen that that is going to happen. But I have a different feeling on it based on the inputs I have. So I think it should work, whichever way they are trying to dodge the situation and take it. So let's see how it goes.
All right. Okay, last two or three people. Ujwalji, please go ahead. Ujwalji, you're mute. Okay, Ujwalji, maybe we'll take you later. Nipun.
Yeah, Varun.
There's a lot of disturbance. Ujwal, there's not disturbance here.
Okay. Is it clear now?
बहुत static आ रहा है, बहुत static आ रहा है. Can't hear you.
All right. Yeah, am I clear now?
Yes, now you're absolutely clear.
Yeah. Varun, first of all, a very good evening to you, Sushil ji, Colonel Adiak sir, and सभी दोस्तों को जय हिंद, जय भारत, राम राम.
Jai Hind.
Yeah, my two bits, we've always idolized Sushil ji. I've tried to make it a point to listen to him in whichever fora he has been speaking, and wherever I could get a chance to listen to him, and to Colonel Adiak sir as well. Sir, just with a lot of respect, sir, maybe this government has been able to. I'm not batting for it. I'm just an aware citizen. Maybe this government did a lot of homework to do away with the Article 35A and 370, and then to manage the situation without any major repercussions. That is one. So I think their intent is very clear. Yeah, their intent has been very clear, and they've done a lot of serious work. Background work goes into it, without being able to manage such a situation so successfully. So probably the time is okay. We ought to know the history, where we are coming from, so that we know where we are going. I mean, you are right on that. I entirely agree with you. And the angst also of every Kashmiri, I feel it in my heart. Because I've also spent some time in Kashmir, though just visiting. But at the same time, what I see the way forward is that maybe this will be done in stages. Whatever needs to happen will happen in stages. A durable solution will only come about in stages. It can't be a very rude shock kind of a treatment. That may not happen. Otherwise, you may not be able to carry the state along and all the communities along. So that was my humble submission. Yeah, and I entirely agree with you on 2 points. I also would like Colonel Adiak sir also to represent us in the fora where he can. The acknowledgement of the genocide and establishment of a commission or a tribunal is absolutely critical, and no time bar cases, nothing like time bar issues. This is a case of genocide. Okay, they hunted all the Germans, and then brought them back to the International Court of Justice, didn't they? Why can't we do it for the killers of Kashmiri Hindus? Then the people who have encroached on their properties, people who have encroached on the temples, there are a lot of, I think more than 1,200 temples which have been encroached on, and they have entirely been changed. The usage has been changed. Yeah, so we need to reclaim those. So this cannot happen without a serious tribunal or a commission being, empowered and formed by under the aegis of maybe Supreme Court or whoever, by the orders of the government. This needs to happen, sir. Punishment needs to be meted out to the people who have done all this killing and mayhem. We cannot let that go unchecked, unpunished. Needs to happen side by side. Like Sushilji said, it can't be a sequential thing. We can have multiple levels, multi-pronged approach. But at the same time, sir, my humble view, as I see it, definitely this solution will come about, but it will happen in stages. That was my very, very humble submission, sir. And salutations to Sushilji. You've been through a lot. Kashmiri Hindus have been through a lot, and they deserve justice. That is the primary requisite. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Josie. Nipul, you want to go next? I just want to be mindful. बहुत लंबा हो गया ये session. मुझे आरडीएक्स सर ने पूछा भी था शुरुआत में कि what is the plan, but मैंने यही कहा था, plan is dependent on people. I know they are big fans of Kalal and they are big fans, even bigger fans of Sushil Panditji. So this was bound to happen. So I apologize again. But please go ahead, Nipun, your question.
Hi, Varun. I am having just two questions, two points only. First
Sure.
is Sushil sir said ki Rohingyas are settling in Jammu in that reserved area. Similar thing is happening in Pathankot and nobody is putting eye on that. Lot of Gujars. I belong to Shakpur. I know what type of topography Pathankot has. And day by day, these Gujars from Jammu, who earlier come for only with the sheep to get them grazed in the winters, now a lot of Gujars have come and they have purchased their land and they are building houses there. And nobody is looking at this, even after attacks in Dinanagar and all. So Pathankot is a very narrow passage which Indian forces go to Kashmir. So government should look into this. First point is this. And second, I want to join when sir was telling that how exodus happened. And when Kashmiri Pandits asked the neighbors that you are involved, that they are saying ki, nahi, we are not involved. These guys are those who have taken up the guns. Total hypocrisy. Yesterday also a guy joined our stream and he told me that we are better, more of Indians than you. You know nothing because you are Modi back than Modi. And the second point he gave me is ki, you don't know about the idea. 14 days we were inside, that we don't have 4G. So I told him, who is responsible for this? You guys are responsible and you took up the guns. Army is going to take action. Thirdly, he said कि Article 370 came up in 1930. मैंने कहा तेरा बाप गया था 1930 में पीछे जाके 50 में आके करके क्या फिर? This type of mentality इस guy है. मतलब ये मदरसा पढ़ा रहे कश्मीर में कि भाई 1930 से था आर्टिकल 370 और 35 से इंडिया का कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन 52 में रहा. How smart these guys are. Full product. So a new propaganda is going on.
Don't worry.
These are 2 points I wanted to add. Right, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Jain.
All right. Yeah, great point.
Thank
Just because we are almost on the verge, please go ahead, common man.
Good evening, Jai Shri Ram, to everyone. मैं directly point पे आ जाता हूँ.
Yeah.
You guys can hear me clearly, right? Loud and clear.
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay. देखिए मैं directly point पे आता हूँ कि मेरी thinking बहुत unorthodox है, तो please bear with me. देखिए already उज्जवल भाई ने already जो मैं कहने वाला था already वो Germans का example दे दिया already, so he's covered it. देखिए कि उज्जवल भाई जो कह रहे हैं उसको मैं थोड़ा extend करता हूँ कि we need to, or the government needs to set an example. जैसे कि आप लोग जो कह रहे हैं ना कि एक जगह पर जहां पर अंडर द कार्पेट डाल दिए जेनोसाइड, तो ये दूसरी जगह पर रिपीट हो जाएगी, टेम्पलेट बन चुका है इनके लिए. तो यू नीड टू सेट एन, यू गॉट टू मेक समवन एन एग्जांपल. जब तक आप नहीं करोगे ये इट्स नॉट गोना स्टॉप. ये रुकेगा नहीं. तो छोड़ो, इनको तो डर भी नहीं है. कल देव आप भी कह रहे थे कि ये कुछ पॉलिटिकल गुंडे हैं जो कि कर रहे हैं, इनका जो कुछ भी मकसद है. बट विद ऑल ड्यू रिस्पेक्ट, गवर्नमेंट से बड़ा गुंडा तो कोई नहीं होता है. गवर्नमेंट हैव ऑल द पावर एंड द रिसोर्सेस. तो फिर इनकी हिम्मत कैसे हो रही है? माफ कीजिए, मैं गवर्नमेंट को गुंडा कह रहा हूं, पर बात तो सही है एक्चुअली कि गवर्नमेंट हैज ऑल द पावर, रिसोर्सेस एंड द इन्फिनिट अमाउंट ऑफ बजट, और वो टैक्स पेयर के पास जाता है. तो इनकी परफॉर्मेंस कहां पर है? मींस दीज गाइज आर नॉट परफॉर्मिंग फॉर व्हाट दे आर गेटिंग पेड. और ये जितनी भी गवर्नमेंट सर्विसेज है, ये सब ऐसी की वैसी है. ये कुछ परफॉर्मेंस नहीं दे रही है, इसलिए ये सब हो रहा है. सबका अपना अपना एजेंडा है. वेरी गुड न्यूज. इनकी अपनी अपनी पॉलिटिकल पार्टी, बहुत अच्छी बात है. पॉलिटिकल पार्टी अलग अलग होनी चाहिए. आई एम नॉट डिनाइंग ऑन दैट, ठीक है, पर एक बार अगर आप पावर में आ जाते हो तो आपकी कोर रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी बनती है। और ये जो 370 का जो एग्जाम्पल है, ओके, दिस इज सेंड वेव्स टू द होल वर्ल्ड। तो यहां ही मत रुको, गो ऑन, कैरी ऑन, व्हाट इज स्टॉपिंग यू? आज ही देख लो वेस्ट बंगाल में जो हो रहा है, वो जो कुछ भी उस औरत का नाम है, वॉट एवर शी इज डूइंग यार, एग्जैक्टली, बट इट्स नॉट गुड, इट्स रिपीटिंग। एंड ये जितनी भी हो रही है इनके अंदर, कौन कौन किसको इफेक्ट हो रहा है, कौन मारा जा रहा है? एक कॉमन आदमी मारा जा रहा है। गद्दी तो इनकी वैसे के वैसे ही है, तो पैसा भी खर्च हो रहा है, कौन कर रहा है? कॉमन मैन ही कर रहा है। See, this is my take की एग्जाम्पल तो सेट करना पड़ेगा, एंड यू विल हैव टू टेक टफ डिसीजंस, और you're gonna get heat internationally, नहीं करोगे तो भी मिलने वाला ही है। और जो कुछ भी अब तक जो बोलते हैं ना कि इंडिया की जो रेपुटेशन थोड़ी बहुत बनी है, वो पूरी की पूरी खत्म हो जाएगी। We'll be going to back to the pavilion, square one. That's all from addition from me. Thank you very much, and my sincere apologies if it's hurt anyone's sentiment or emotions. That was not my intention. Thank
None
you.
on the screen. None on the screen, as far as I know. Off screen, somebody must have got hurt. I don't know. 6 on the screen. I think you're okay.
All right. Okay.
Thank you. So you're the common man. He's the common man who came on the show as well.
कॉमन मैन। इन्हीं का कल
Okay.
एक छोटा सा इनका एक खुद का शो भी अभी कर रहे हैं, you know, series. Maybe you want to talk a little bit about that as well. Just a brief 2 second, 3 second.
सर मैं बेसिकली मैं एक पहला सेशन है मेरा, तो मैं इस पे बात करना चाहता हूँ, एंड इट्स नॉट मी ट्राइंग टू एडुकेट, मैं किसी को सिखाने की कोशिश नहीं, मैं आप लोगों से सीखना चाहता हूँ। और टॉपिक ये है कि बिहेवियर एंड माइंडसेट प्री एंड पोस्ट इंडिपेंडेंस डे और इंडिपेंडेंस। ये हमारा जो बिहेवियर और माइंडसेट है उसके पर है पूरा टॉपिक, एंड this can include politics, this can include, you know, daily political science, even culture, religion, जो कुछ भी है, it's I wish to be open actually on it। पर क्या है कि मेन मुद्दा इसमें ऑब्जेक्टिव क्या है पूरे टॉपिक का, कि जो कुछ भी हमारे पास अच्छा है, हमें अच्छा दिया गया, लेट्स कीप इट। और जो कुछ भी अच्छा है बट इट्स आउट ऑफ डेटेड, I think we need to make it obsolete and think about something. What is negative is negative. If we can beat it, it's fine. But you can't win all of them. So move on. Let's come up with some constructive solutions. और ये जो छोटी छोटी चीज है, वहां से अगर हम छोटी सी चीज से अगर चेंज लाएं, वो छोटी से छोटी collectively बहुत बड़ी बनेगी. And that's how the whole nation and one day the world will improve and humanity will improve. That's the goal on it. बहुत बड़ा goal है, मैं छोटी चीज से start करते हैं.
Best of luck.
All right. Perfect. Thank you. All right. So just because we're gonna end this stream in the next less than 5 minutes, I would say, I promise. So please, Leena ji and Gaurav, मैंने आपको ले तो लिया है. Let's make it very quick, both of them.
Can I go first?
Yes, please. Go ahead.
Yeah. I just want to say कि अभी ये talk.
Oh, ये topic continue करना
ये करते थे, और मुझे बहुत सुन के तब शायद सारे मीनिंग समझ में नहीं आते थे, बट अभी बड़ा होके तो बहुत समझ में आ रहा है। और ये कितनी देर, मतलब कितनी देर हम बातें ही करते रहेंगे। माय इशू इज दैट कि अभी एक्शन का टाइम आ गया है, और अगर कोई, मतलब मेरे घर तक कोई आया नहीं है, इसलिए मैं व्हाई शुड आई बॉदर, ये जो एटीट्यूड है हमको छोड़ना पड़ेगा। एंड द थिंग इज दैट वी एज हिंदूज, एज द ओरिजिनल, जिसे कहते हैं भारतवर्ष के जो भी है कश्मीर के, तो मतलब हम लोग का एक गाना था, कश्मीर की धरती रानी है, सरताज हमारा है। वो तो सरताज ऐसा अगर जख्मी हो गया या सर कहाँ गया, हमारा सर फिर गया, तो क्या करेंगे हम? तो ये नहीं होने देना है। और अभी ये बहुत डिस्कशन हो गया, सालों से डिस्कशन चल रहा है, एंड हिंदूज कैन स्टे एनीवेयर एल्स इन द वर्ल्ड, इन एनी कंट्री, proper like US or UK or Europe, with respect other countries also, but in their own country, if they can't live in their own land, it is shame on all of us. और मैं सुशील जी को कहती हूँ कि मतलब ये मैं कुछ वर्ड्स नहीं ढूंढ पा रही हूँ कि मैं आपको क्या कहूँ, लेकिन बट मैं महसूस कर सकती हूँ, मैं बिल्कुल ये मतलब ये कहना भी मेरे लिए है ये कि मैं आपके साथ हूँ और ये सब है। मेरा कहना है अभी बातें बंद, अभी एक्शन चाहिए। एंड वी वांट टू सी अवर कश्मीरी पंडित्स बैक इन कश्मीर इन देयर ओन लैंड्स, एंड वी वांट टू सी, आई हैव विजिटेड कश्मीर व्हेन आई वाज इन 5th standard, and वो कश्मीर मुझे वापस चाहिए, वो कश्मीर मुझे वापस चाहिए। और अभी एक्शन लेने की जरूरत है। डिस्कशन, मीटिंग्स बहुत हो गए, सालों से हम लोग करते रहेंगे और भारत के टुकड़े टुकड़े होते रहेंगे, वो नहीं चाहिए हमको। वहां से बंगाल, यहाँ से कश्मीर का तो हो ही गया, यहाँ से बंगाल छूट रहा है, नीचे केरला जा रहा है, ये कब तक? नहीं होगा ये। आई एम सॉरी, ये थोड़ा मैं रिलीजियस कुछ बोल गई, लेकिन दैट इज द फैक्ट। ये हिंदू राष्ट्र है और ये हिंदू राष्ट्र रहना चाहिए। हिंदुओं को अगर यहाँ जगह, उनकी जगह छीन ली जाएगी तो वापस देना सारे हिंदुओं का कर्तव्य है, ना कि केवल कश्मीरी लोगों का। आई एम सॉरी टू से दिस, आई एम बिकमिंग लिटिल, मेरा खून खोल रहा है, इसलिए मैं आई कांट कंट्रोल माई वर्ड्स, बट ये बहुत लिमिट हो गया है, ये लिमिट के बाहर हो गया है। नन अदर रिलीजन कैन बेयर लाइक दिस। तो अभी गीता सुन के कह के बहुत हो गया, अभी उठो धनुष्य बाण लेके, और जो जिसको भी मारना है मारो अभी। बस यही मेरा कहना है कि ये युद्ध का समय है और युद्ध ही करना पड़ेगा।
Right. थोड़ा
आई एम सॉरी।
let's not instigate anyone, but we all understand. I could see that smile on Kalna's face, on Girijaji's face, and I can see, the whole motive, लीना जी, इस सेशन का और इस सीरीज का यही है कि अगर लोग अब अवेयर हो जाएं, बात करने की जगह अब कुछ एक्शन करें, आई थिंक आवर मिशन इज अकम्प्लिश। आई एम श्योर कर्नल विल हैव a badge of honor, जिसे कहते हैं ना कि हाँ, जो इंटेंशन थी वो इंटेंशन से जिससे ये किया, आई थिंक our mission seems to be kind of starting to accomplish. So thank you for resonating with our sentiments and emotions. So मैं सबको जवाब देने की करूंगा बाद में, एंड में they will kind of conclude, but please गौरव बोले आप म्यूट है।
आप सभी लोगों को जय श्री राम।
जय श्री राम
जी। देखिए, लीना जी ने जो कहा, मोस्टली मैं उनकी बातों से एग्री हूँ, बस वो लास्ट में जो वो कह गई थी कि मारना मरना है, उससे मैं एग्री नहीं करता हूँ। बाकी उनकी और बातें जो थी सारी मेक सेंस, ठीक है। और उसी में मैं ऐड करना चाहूंगा, और मैं कुछ बताना नहीं चाहता, मैं आप लोगों से ही सीखना चाहता हूँ। मेरा क्वेश्चन है सिर्फ आप लोगों से सीखने के लिए कि व्हेन वी से दैट आवर गवर्नमेंट इज कमिंग अंडर प्रेशर of under separatist forces like Gupkar gang and etc. And so why does our government come under their pressure? So I think, and I want to ask you, am I saying right, that basically we Hindus or Jains or Bauds, we are somehow unable to create that kind of pressure on our government. Either we think that this is our beloved government, so we should not make pressure on it, or either for some other reason. So when the ecosystem of the communist and separatist and other religions is so strong, I think we lack that ecosystem, and we are unable to make that kind of pressure on our government, and we are not that ferocious. Am I asking you, if we see that if something happens in France, अगर फ्रांस में कुछ होता है, somebody is beheaded, then Muslims in India, I am taking the name of the religion, then Muslims in India start protesting in India. See, we should appreciate their unity. And I think we as Hindu, Jains and Bauds, we lack that kind of ferocious unity. It is my question to all of you, especially to respected Sri Sushil Pandit ji. That's all I want to say.
All right.
This is an observation more than a question, and I agree with your observation by the unity. When you are united against something. There is a target, a common enemy, or there is a common challenge. हमारे पास पिछले 1-1.5 साल से एक संकट है, और वो संकट है शत्रु बोध का। संकट ही संकट है, हम अभी तक ये जान ही नहीं पाए हैं कि हम पर एक संकट आ रहा है। हम आज बच्चों को इंजीनियर डॉक्टर बना रहे हैं, पैसा कमाने के धंधे सिखा रहे हैं, उनको बड़ा बंगला बड़ा गाड़ी लेने के लिए बोल रहे हैं। पड़ोस में क्या हो रहा है, मोहल्ले क्या हो रहा है, शहर में क्या हो रहा है, समाज में क्या हो रहा है, उसके बारे में नहीं बता रहे हैं। तो जब हमारी प्राथमिकताएं, हमारी प्रायोरिटीज लाइफ में रिफ्लेक्ट नहीं हमारी रियलिटी को, हमारे एग्जिस्टेंशियल थ्रेट्स को, हमारे अस्तित्व पर जो संकट है, आप अगर अपने मस्तिष्क कैनवस पर ये नहीं देख पा रहे हैं कि हम सेशनली पर हैं, कल्चरली इरोड हो रहे हैं, आइडेंटिटी भाप बन के उड़ रही है। मुश्किल से 70 साल पहले जिसे आज हम पाकिस्तान कहते हैं वो भारत था। वहां पर करोड़ों हिंदू सिख थे, करोड़ों, हजारों लाखों नहीं। वो कहां हैं उसकी चिंता नहीं है किसी को। उनका क्या हुआ कोई जानना नहीं चाहता, पढ़ना नहीं चाहता। आए दिन वहां हर साल 1000 से हिंदू लड़कियां, नाबालिग लड़कियां अपहरण करके, जबरदस्ती धर्मांतरण करके अधेड़ उम्र के शादीशुदा बाल बच्चे वाले मुसलमानों को ब्याह दी जाती हैं और फिर वो उनको डंप कर देते हैं, वो प्रोस्टिट्यूशन में लैंड अप करती हैं। हमें कोई फर्क ही नहीं पड़ता है, कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता है। बांग्लादेश में करोड़ों से घट करके वो हिंदू अब कुछ लाखों तक पहुंच गया। हमें कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता। तो अगर आपके सरोकार नहीं है कि आपके अस्मिता के साथ, पहचान के साथ, समुदाय के साथ, संस्कृति के साथ, इतिहास के साथ क्या हो रहा है, तो फिर आप किसके लिए संगठित होंगे? संगठित तो संगठन करना, यूनिटी होना एक रेस्पॉन्स है ना। वो रेस्पॉन्स होता है किसी स्टिमुलस पर। आपने स्टिमुलस रेस्पॉन्स थ्योरी पढ़ी होगी। वो स्टिमुलस है थ्रेट, वो स्टिमुलस है चैलेंज। जब आप उस स्टिमुलस को रिसीव नहीं कर पा रहे हैं, आपके रिसेप्टर्स जो हैं, आपके एंटेना जो हैं, वो काम नहीं कर रहे हैं, तो फिर आप कैसे यूनाइट होंगे? और वो एंटेना काम इसलिए नहीं कर रहे हैं क्योंकि हमारे यहां जो नैरेटिव है, जो डिस्कोर्स है, जो विमर्श है मेरे भाई, वो लॉपसाइडेड है। हमारी सरकार उस विमर्श में, हमारा शिक्षा व्यवस्था, हमारा मीडिया उस विमर्श में नहीं। वो विमर्श गायब है, वो डिस्कोर्स गायब है। तो जिस रेस्पॉन्स के लिए आप अधीर हो रहे हैं, उसको, वो आपके अंदर से तभी निकलेगा जब आप उस स्टिमुलस को रिसीव करेंगे, उस थ्रेट को, उस संकट को पहचानेंगे। वो पहचान का ही बोध है, वो शत्रु के बोध की ही परेशानी है। आप आज भी दे दी हमें आजादी बिना खड़ग बिना ढाल गाते हैं। आप आज भी ईश्वरा तेरो नाम गाते हैं। आप समझ नहीं पा रहे हैं कि एक पूरी की पूरी थियोलॉजी है जो आपको आइडेंटिफाई करती है एक नाम से, एक पहचान से। और उस थियोलॉजी में ये कहा गया है कि अगर आपकी ये पहचान है तो आपका मरना जरूरी है, और आपको है जो उस थियोलॉजी को मानता है। आप ना उसे पढ़ना चाहते हैं, ना उसे समझना चाहते हैं। आप देख ही नहीं पा रहे हैं कि आपके आसपास क्या हो रहा है। तो आप यूनाइट क्यों होंगे? किस लिए होंगे? तो एक नैरेटिव की कमी है, हमारी अपनी व्यवस्था उस नैरेटिव को पनपने नहीं देती। जैसे कश्मीर में वो ये मान के तैयार नहीं है कि हिंदुओं का जेनोसाइड हुआ है, वो कहते हैं कि वहां पर कुछ लोग बहकाए में आ गए या उनको नौकरियां चाहिए, उनके पत्थर है, उनको लैपटॉप चाहिए। अरे साहब, वहां क्या हो रहा है इसके बारे में कम से कम शुरू करो। मैक्रॉन ने सच बोला है फ्रांस में, उसने कहा कि मैं मस्जिदों में सर्वेलेंस कैमरा लगाऊंगा और हर फ्राइडे जो डिस्कोर्स होता है ट्रांसलेट करके देखेंगे, उसको सर्वेलेंस में रखेंगे कि कौन मौलवी क्या बोल रहा है। मैक्रॉन ने फ्रांस में कहा, और ये लॉ बना दिसंबर में। मिस्टर गौरव गुप्ता, आप गूगल करके देख दिसंबर में क्या लॉ पास किया। उन्होंने ये लॉ पास किया कि जो हमारा फॉर्मल स्कूलिंग सिस्टम है, एजुकेशन सिस्टम है, उसके बाहर कोई किसी को एजुकेशन देगा, वो पहले हमसे पूछेगा, रेगुलेट करेंगे हम उसको कि वो क्या पढ़ाना चाह रहा है। नहीं, उन्होंने ये लॉ भी बनाया कि अगर स्कूल नहीं, आप अपने घर किसी को बुलाते हैं, किसी मौलवी को, आके जरा मेरे बच्चे को कुरान पढ़ा दे, हमसे पूछना पड़ेगा परमिशन। उसको ये कहने की हिम्मत आई है। मालूम है कि ये जहर कहां से आ रहा है। आप ये जानते हुए भी इस पर पर्दा डालते हैं। एक मुस्लिम राष्ट्रीय मंच नाम की संस्था है, वो उत्तराखंड में मदरसे चलाने निकली है, आपको मालूम है? आप पता करते हैं मदरसों में क्या पढ़ाया जा रहा है? तो जब आप लीपापोती करेंगे, पर्दा डालेंगे, उसको पहचानेंगे नहीं, उसके लिए गलत शब्द इस्तेमाल करेंगे, लोगों को बहकाएंगे, तो फिर यही होगा। कौन यूनाइट होगा? क्यों यूनाइट होगा? धन्यवाद।
ग्रेट ग्रेट पॉइंट। हाँ जी उज्जवल जी, प्लीज जल्द।
एक इम्पॉर्टेंट क्वेश्चन रह गया सर, वो मैं श्री सुशील पंडित जी से पूछना चाहता हूँ, हम सब के लिए। सुशील जी, ये रोशनी एक्ट का
हाँ जी,
वो काफी इसमें बहुत बड़ा स्कैम सब निकल के सामने आया, लेकिन उसमें अभी अपडेटेड वास्तुस्थिति क्या
हाँ जी।
है? कितना उसमें डिस्कवर हुआ है, क्या है, और उसमें कुछ एक्शन हो रहा है, नहीं हो रहा है? सर, हम लोग को जरा एजुकेट करिए इसके बारे में सर।
यही बड़ा इंटरेस्टिंग सवाल है उज्जवल जी। रोशनी एक्ट आप जानते हैं क्या था? ये पंडित अटल बिहारी वाजपेयी जी की जब सरकार चल रही थी, तो वहां पर फारूक अब्दुल्ला चीफ मिनिस्टर थे। उन्होंने कानून पास किया और उन्होंने कहा कि ये जो सरकारी जमीन है, जंगलों की जमीन है, इसके ऊपर लोग बाग, गुज्जर, बकरवाल, चरवाहे, गडरिये, कुछ शेड्यूल ट्राइब, कुछ लोग आके बस जाते हैं, तो ये उनको हम दे देंगे, सरकार उन्हीं को दे देगी, वो रहते हैं वहां पे, तो क्या करें। तो ये रोशनी एक्ट, सरकार ने कहा कि ये जमीन कैसे दी जाएगी, इनको सस्ते दामों में बेच दी जाएगी और उससे फिर जो पैसा आएगा उससे हम पावर प्लांट्स बनाएंगे। इसका नाम रोशनी एक्ट इसी तरह पड़ा कि पावर प्लांट्स बनाएंगे। सरकारी जमीन जिसके ऊपर लोग जम के बैठ गए हैं, स्क्वाटर्स हैं, हम कहेंगे हम इसको रेगुलराइज करते हैं, आप इतने पैसे दे दीजिए, वो पैसे दे के रेगुलराइज हो जाएगी, फिर हम उस पैसे से पावर प्लांट्स बनाएंगे। तो ये रोशनी एक्ट था। अब इससे 25,000 करोड़ रुपए आना था। वो सारी जमीन रेगुलराइज होनी थी। वो सारी जमीन रेगुलराइज हो गई, आए 76 करोड़ रुपए। तो जमीन तो गई, पैसे आए सिर्फ 76 करोड़ रुपए। अब इस जमीन को किसने लिया? तो उसी भटिंडी फॉरेस्ट में, जहां सिंजवान कैंप के पास रोहिंग्या बसाए गए थे, वहां फारूक अब्दुल्ला ने जंगल के अंदर एकड़ों का फार्म हाउस बनाया सरकारी जमीन। इसी तरह वहां अन्य लोगों ने जमीनें सरकार की ले ली। रोशनी एक्ट के अंतर्गत बेनामी इधर उधर गांव चरवाहा ये सब सरकार की लाख रुपए की जमीन जब्त कर ली, गबन कर ली। आप रोशनी एक्ट में क्या क्या हुआ, ये जब एक्ट पास हुआ था तब कहा गया 1990 तक जो जहां बैठा है उसकी रेगुलराइज कर देंगे। फारूक अब्दुल्ला की सरकार गई तो मुफ्ती मोहम्मद सईद की सरकार आई, उसने कहा ये 2003 तक जो जहां बैठा है उसको वहां तक बिठाए रखेंगे। ठीक है, अपने लोगों को भी जमीन बांट दी। फिर गुलाम नबी आजाद की सरकार आई, उसने 2008 में कहा कि 2006 तक जो जहां बैठा है उसको वहीं बैठा देंगे। तो अंधी लूट चल रही है सरकारी जमीन की एक्ट के नाम पर। उस हमेशा अमेंडमेंट करके आगे बढ़ाए जाते रहे और इस लूट में सभी शामिल थे, यहां तक कि 2015 में पीडीपी की सरकार बीजेपी की सरकार के साथ आई। रोशनी एक्ट में फिर आगे से सीमा और आगे बढ़ गई। हर सरकार अपने लोगों को जमीनें बांटने के लिए उसमें कट ऑफ डेट की अमेंडमेंट करके आगे बढ़ाती थी। अब बीजेपी पीडीपी सरकार ने भी यही किया, लेकिन 2015 में एक नौजवान एडवोकेट ने कहा यह तो अंधेरगर्दी चल रही है, जो सत्ता में आता है वो अपने लोगों को जमीन बांटने के लिए इस एक्ट थोड़ा सा अमेंड करके इसकी कट ऑफ डेट बढ़ाता। तो उसने हाई कोर्ट में एक अर्जी लगाई, कहा कि ये लूट है। तो हाई कोर्ट ने पूछा, जवाब मांगा एलएनडीओ से। उन्होंने कहा अच्छा हमें बताइए कि अब तक रोशनी एक्ट में पट्टे किन किन लोगों को कहां कहां दिए गए हैं। उस पर पर्दा डाला गया तो हाई कोर्ट ने सीबीआई से जांच करवाई। सीबीआई ने पाया कि 95% लोग जिन्होंने जम्मू में रोशनी एक्ट में जमीन ली है वो मुसलमान है, जबकि जम्मू की मुस्लिम आबादी 40% भी नहीं है। तो ये हो क्या रहा है? तो ये रोशनी एक्ट की आड़ में जम्मू का एक डेमोग्राफिक इन्वेजन हो रहा है और इसलिए फिर हाई कोर्ट ऑफ जम्मू कश्मीर ने इस पूरे एक्ट को रद्द किया और इसके ऊपर एफआईआर कॉन्स्टिट्यूट की और कहा कि अब इनके सब जमीनें वापस खींची जाएं। रोशनी एक्ट यहां पर आके अभी खड़ा है, लेकिन इसमें जिन चोरियां की हैं, सी दी सच फ्रॉड possible because they are a low risk enterprise या कोर्ट में। तो हम क्या करें? लेकिन अगर कोर्ट ने कैंसिल किया और आप चोरी करते पकड़े गए, आपको चौराहे पे हटर लगेंगे तो आप 10 बार सोचेंगे। लेकिन अगर आप मुस्कुरा के कपड़े झाड़ के निकल आएंगे, कहेंगे ठीक है साहब अब लैंड जो चोरी की थी वो अब चली गई, क्या करें, आपका नुकसान तो कुछ नहीं हुआ ना, मुफ्त की लैंड थी चली गई, आपकी थी भी नहीं। हमारे यहां चोरी एक लो रिस्क एंटरप्राइज इसी तरह बना है। बड़े बड़े पॉलिटिशियंस चोरी करते हैं, कोई रिस्क नहीं है, हंटर खाने का, फांसी चढ़ने का कोई रिस्क नहीं है।
बट सर क्रिमिनल प्रोसिक्यूशन नहीं होगा इसमें? इसमें क्रिमिनल प्रोसिक्यूशन नहीं होगा सर किसी का भी?
भगवान करे हो ना, मैं तो कहता हूं हो। अभी तक तो ऐसा कोई एविडेंस नहीं है कि सरकारी जमीन गजब करने के अप्रैल, बताइए मुझे, अभी तक मेरे पास ऐसा कोई एविडेंस या एग्जाम्पल नहीं है। इसलिए ये बड़ा लो रिस्क एंटरप्राइज है। तो फारूक अब्दुल्ला और उमर अब्दुल्ला कभी जेल जाएंगे? रोशनी एक्ट को कंसीव करने वाले को जेल जाना चाहिए सबसे पहले। ये इंस्टीट्यूशनलाइज चोरी थी, डाका था। लेकिन नहीं है, चल रहा है, तारीख पे तारीख पड़ेगी, जिसके कब्जे में जमीन है उसके पास रहेगी, उसके बाद लोग भूल भाल जाएंगे का मामला। रोशनी एक्ट क्या है और उसमें क्या हो रहा है, आई होप आई हैव बीन एबल टू एक्सप्लेन थिंग्स टू यू इन अ रूडिमेंटरी फैशन। If you want to
thank
know
you,
more
sir.
about it, that the advocate I was talking about, Kur Sharma in Jammu. He's the leader of Ekjut Jammu. He has all the documentation also.
Thank you, sir. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat sabhi ko, sir. Thank you, sir.
Sorry, I was on mute. Thank you so much. हाँ गौरव बोलो, फटाफट बोलो.
एक बात मैं आप सबसे
कोई
कहना
जाने
चाहूंगा,
नहीं देगा.
देखिए
हाँ बोलो बोलो.
सॉरी,
नहीं मैं कह रहा हूँ इन
हाँ,
दोनों को कोई जाने नहीं देगा लग रहा है. आज 12 बज चुके हैं. प्लीज लेट्स मेक इट क्विक. यस प्लीज.
मैं एक क्वेश्चन कहना चाहूंगा. देखिए जो ये पॉपुलेशन कंट्रोल एक्ट डिफरेंट स्टेट्स में आ रहा है, ये पूरी कंट्री के फेवर में है, और इसका जो भी ऑपोजिशन हो रहा है वो उससे फिर एक बार कहीं हमारी गवर्नमेंट प्रेशर में ना आ जाए. तो यहाँ पे हम लोगों से मतलब मैं जो हमारे हिंदू भाई हैं, जैन भाई हैं, बौद्ध भाई हैं, मैं उन सबसे अपील करना चाहूंगा कि प्लीज आप यूनाइट हो जाइए और आप इसको गवर्नमेंट को पूरा सपोर्ट दीजिए. देखिए जो अपोजिट इकोसिस्टम है वो कहीं आपसे ज्यादा स्ट्रांग एक बार फिर साबित ना हो जाए. आपको गवर्नमेंट को इस वेहेमेंटली सपोर्ट करना होगा, नहीं तो ये भी ठंडे बस्ते में चला जाएगा.
पॉपुलेशन कंट्रोल एक्ट आ रहा है.
नहीं टू
किसने कहा
स्टेट्स
आपको
में
कि पॉपुलेशन कंट्रोल एक्ट आ रहा है?
सर असम में बोला गया है कि 2 बच्चे से ज्यादा जिनके होंगे उनको गवर्नमेंट फैसिलिटीज मिलनी बंद हो जाएंगी. इस तरह से है या नहीं है?
ये किसने बोला, कब बोला?
सर असम के चीफ मिनिस्टर साहब ने बोला है, हेमंत बिस्वा.
अच्छा, ये जो सीए सर हमारी पार्लियामेंट ने एक एक्ट ऑलरेडी पास किया है जिसका नाम है CAA. ये 12 दिसंबर 2019 को पास हुआ था. इसके अभी तक रूल्स तक पब्लिश नहीं किए गए हैं. जो चीज पार्लियामेंट पास कर चुकी है उसका इंप्लीमेंटेशन नहीं हुआ है अभी तक. आप कह रहे हैं कि नए एक्ट आएंगे.
सर माफी चाहूंगा, मैं वही कहना चाह रहा था सर कि जो दूसरा इकोसिस्टम है वो बहुत स्ट्रांग है और हमारा इकोसिस्टम शायद उतना स्ट्रांग नहीं है. कैसे हम उसको स्ट्रांग बनाएं, कैसे? आपने बताया कि यूनाइटेड होने के लिए तो स्टिमुलस चाहिए होता है, वो मैं समझ गया आपकी थ्योरी, लेकिन सर वो कैसे होगी? वो क्या करें हम, मतलब जिससे ऐसा हो पाए? नहीं तो ये सारा इकोसिस्टम फिर प्रेशर डाल देगा और जो ये थोड़ा बहुत करना भी चाह रहे हैं वो नहीं हो पाएगा फिर.
तो जो लोग अभी भी फ्राइडे मूवीज IPL में टंगे हुए हैं, वो जहां बैठते हैं वहां थोड़ी अग्नि प्रज्वलन करना पड़ेगा. जब थोड़ी हीट चढ़ेगी तो लोग पता करेंगे क्या करना है, कैसे करना है, समझ में आएगी और क्या कर सकते हैं.
ग्रेट.
इसी को नैरेटिव बिल्डिंग कहते हैं. आप देखिए क्या ट्रेंड कर रहा है सोशल मीडिया में, आप देखिए न्यूज़पेपर्स में क्या ट्रेंड कर रहा है. जब आप चिंतित होंगे तो प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व होने की तरफ बढ़ेगी. वरना जब तक ये इक्वल एक्सरसाइज रहेगी, लफाजी रहेगी, तब तक ये भगवान भरोसे ही रहेगा. फिर मैक्रोन जहां बैठता है वहां लग गई है, तो वहां कानून आ गया है. वहां मस्जिदों में जो गैर कानूनी थी वहां आप सोच सकते हैं ये में कभी होता हुआ? जिस मस्जिद से निकलकर वो आया था ना, जिसने मारा था उस टीचर को, उस मस्जिद में 6 महीने ताला रहा. कान पे उन्होंने माफिया मांगी और उसके बाद कैमरा लगे सर्विलेंस के. करने से होगा, जैसे बाबा रामदेव कहते हैं ना, योगा करने से होगा, ना करे नहीं होगा.
नहीं होगा.
सही है सर, समझ गया मैं. थैंक यू सर, थैंक यू सो मच.
All right, thank you everyone. Actually, since we are almost at the end, hopefully Gaurav, it's okay if I remove you from the screen. It's okay. And Ujjwal ji, kuch last आपने बोलना हो तो please. Both of you, you're done, right? Okay, thank you so much. All right. एक और हैं जो अभी join करना चाहते हैं. I'll take him in, but Dr. Senthil, please make it very quick. Okay, thank you so much. All right. एक और हैं जो अभी Dr. Senthil, your YouTube is on. Can you please turn it on? Make it very quick. Okay.
Yes. Thank you very much for giving the opportunity. First, namaste to all of you. And first thing is that we should know the meaning of this namaste and our country name. And the reason why we are not united is because, somebody is following their religion properly and somebody is reading their religion. Whatever said in their religion, they are following it. Both the religions, if you see. They have been told that, if you go convert people and if you make everybody follow a religion, you will reach Jannat and, you will reach the heaven. And they are doing their job properly. That means they are following the religion properly and they are, doing what has been told. But in our case, I said namaste. The meaning of namaste is you, the Jivatma, will mix and merge with the Paramatma through 10 ways, Yog, which is that unites the Jivatma with the Paramatma, with 10 ways, which is Karma Yog, Bhakti Yog, Jnana Yog, Raja Yog, Tapa Yog, Japa Yog, Tapa Yog, Mantra Yog, Yantra Yog, Tantra Yog, and Nada Yog or Laya Yog. This is the meaning of namaste. But if you ask me, it is supposed to be touching the heart and it is supposed to point towards the Paramatma. You ask every Hindu how many people know this meaning. And the name of our country name, we call it as Hindu. This is something I want to share it with all of you. We have been told that Sindhu has been renamed as Hindu. That is completely wrong. I'm going to give you a secret today. That is where the problem lies. The Hindu is a Persian name, which has been used to scold people, those who are in darkness. If they say Hind means the guy who is in darkness, who has not seen the light. This was used while compulsory conversion was happening. And those who did not convert, they were called as Hind. That included everybody other than one religion. That is why we so proudly say that ours is not a religion, ours is a way of life.
Dr. Senthil, I will interject here for a very simple reason. 3.5 hours.
I'm just finishing.
Yes. Make it.
I'm just finishing it. I'm just finishing.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I lost you.
So sorry. But yeah,
I understand. That's why I came rushing actually. Just wanted to say this. So Hind is a word which is told to people who are in darkness. And that is why Buddhism, Sikhism, everything became Hinduism. Even Christianity is supposed to be Hinduism. And our country name is Bharat. And we need to fight for the name of the country. Because what can unite all of us is the passion towards our country and our religion. We need to learn our religion in the right way, not the perspective which has been told by other people who planned for 200 years to destroy our culture and even played with our literature. And we need to change our country name. We need to work towards that. And in fact, last 18 years, I'm reading Vedas, Upanishads, and doing classes on every Sunday on Brahma Jnana. And that is exactly, we are trying to not teach, but correct the narrative which has been going wrong against our religion. I think all of us, apart from addressing the issues, we need to go back, look into our house. If you're a Hindu, whether your children are following the religion, are you giving them the right answers? In fact, while we are sitting and talking about the country and fighting for our religion, our children are not following the religion and they are laughing at the back and they are believing in the other religion, saying that there should be one religion, there should be one book. I think that correction should start happening in everybody's house. Anyhow, I came in the last minute. I would like to share a lot of things in the next meetings to come. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
All right. Thank you. Really appreciate that. I wanted to be very, very mindful. I know both the guests have been super generous. I would say almost 3.5, not almost, it's 3 hours and 31 minutes. A record for sure, Colonel. I think we should never ask the question at the beginning of the session, but thank you so much. And before we end the show, I'll start with you, Girijaji. Do you want to say anything before I go to Colonel? Because we're gonna end with Sushil Panditji. So please go ahead. You're mute.
Yes. We have a collective duty to reclaim what we have lost, and we have to do our bit. And we have to put pressure to the government, asking them to give the steps that he has advised. I have noted them down. They are all here. Every day we will tweet. Every day we will write in all the places wherever we can. We see to it that we reach. I'm very sure that this government also is particular that people they need to be connected to the ground reality. I'm very confident about it. So we will work for it, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Colonel, please go ahead.
Yeah, just a couple of sentences there. First is that, the government must continue on the Sam Dand Bhed approach to make sure that what is wrong is corrected and the future is set on the right course. And the harsher decisions, whenever taken, are either with consensus or are then implemented in terms of the best interest and the most opportune time. And that's the government's job, Sam Dand Bhed. Insofar as we are concerned, I concur with all these suggestions made today. The first thing is at our level, we must keep the issues alive. And I think, Varun, it's time to keep the issue of the Kashmiri Pandits more alive, lively, and, going across a time zone from now to the years ahead. Because if you don't do that, this issue will be forgotten with the lapse of a generation ahead. And we need to do it on a regular basis in the sense that all means of communication. I would request Sushil Panditji handles should be visited by all of us, and whosoever he is following and who are from the same genre of thinking about such an issue, we must follow each other there as well on social media so that the algorithm builds up, like I keep saying always, on that component of society and the citizenship, which we are all alive to. It's a necessity. So he can suggest a few names towards the end, what are the major handles, and then everybody goes on to those handles and the ones they are following. That will be a good course correction to get the social media presence in and the community in. The second should be that this issue, Sushilji has to take that initiative, or somebody is more associated, including in the legal realm, and try and file some kind of a public petition to the Rashtrapati and the PMO, and try to make it into a small movement for making it count. And before the next round of consultation is done on J&K part, they should form part of the discussion at the table. They should have that prominence there, and they should be able to have their say. It should be publicized also in media, like everybody else comes out and talks. That voice needs to be heard. I do not know exactly how to steer the Indian media into this activity, but we can make a small suggestions to people we know. Sushilji also knows people. I'm not too sure why this issue is, on a backseat right now. It needs to be made to count. The second is the overall popularity and the key, sort of aspects on which the government is currently running. And one of them is to look at the status of India in the next few years. Keeping that in mind, we should also collectively put a lot of, I will not say exactly pressure, but at least a path we should seek, which the government of the day must follow, because the government of the day is of the people, and people who have been in the majority to make them count should prevail in such issues as well. The next is the legal part, and I will be quite happy if the legal angle. I don't know what happens when something is not even taken into the Supreme Court as a case, so where it lies today. But I'm quite sure there has to be a way ahead. And even if you go by the conventions of the foreign bodies which we discussed about today, and if there is a scope to make it count, I cannot say you can take it to the outside community to act, but at least there should be an awareness campaign also in the Indian diaspora to make sure that this issue is alive. And last but not the least is, I would request through your platform, Varun, Sushilji, again, that it's his duty, it's his moral obligation to not sort of lose that faith and hope, not to give up at the current state of affairs of what he perceives is, because I'm an astute, positive thinker to be able to see through the haze also a little bit, that you know uh, all the instruments of what do you call, um, um, necessities and the kinds of fix required to be given to a particular section or people, the government should be apt, because it's in government's interest, if it has to survive for a longer time, to be able to prove that it means business when it states an intent. Any government which states an intent but does not take a step forward will not be able to survive after maybe 1 or 2 elections more. So it's incumbent on that government to see through, and it's equally incumbent on Sushil ji and everybody he knows, and all citizens like us who have been through as a you know sort of memory refreshment done today, to be able to take it as a greater cause, because finally, if we let them down today, uh, it is not going to resurface in the next generation. That's my personal belief. And the momentum has been quite low for a long time. And once you build a momentum, the intellectual component should be retained. You can't have sort of dharnas and going to people and meeting them on a regular basis, but the intellectual component should remain focused. So small seminars, webinars should be organized wherever Sushilji is, in whichever city. There should be a regular interaction. I believe they used to have that interaction, especially in Delhi Nehru Planetarium. One had heard of it once, but couldn't make it because one was serving that time. But you should have this kind of a so-called discussion going on curating a way forward. And I just hope we don't let them down. We don't let our country down. We don't let the good faith of citizens down in whatever we believe in. And let's not expect too much currently between the lines from the government of the day as well. So give them time to prove what they intend doing. And as I see it, it will take a little more time. It is not going to be brass tacks starting tomorrow. It's going to take time. And if Sushilji has mentioned is willing to wait as long as assured, I think that assurance cannot be public, but let's see if I can get some kind of an assurances which is non-public and be able to communicate in the channel I can. So let's do that for him as well. And thank you, Sushilji, for being here from my side personally, because at least you've been able to communicate and speak both your heart and mind at the same time. And such time is not feasible on a TV channel debate, because there hardly you speak for 3 minutes and the battery is off. And I think you need to make more social media presence. I don't know why I don't see your tweets more often, although we follow each other. But that needs to get on, and you need to keep the momentum going. Any help you require from a channel like Gaur or Varun today, or you want to do anything more, you please let us know for public propagation of the entire effort. And personally, even if it requires something to be done, you are more than welcome to communicate. And I will not let you down personally on this struggle of sorts for a long time. And I personally believe that it is our moral obligation as well. And without going into, I've not talked about many religious issues today, as you must have noticed, Varun. I personally have a religion to follow, but for the longest time in my life, like I mentioned in my first show itself, there are 3 topics I don't talk about. One of them is religion. But the only religion I follow actually, and which I will be convinced if people follow, is true spirit of being a citizen of a good country as a good citizen first. And that should be your religion. If that is in order, everything will be in order. And narrative building and opinion shaping are critical, because the cabal, the other side, has always countered this Kashmiri Pandit narrative and never given a voice itself. So whether it's the Lutyens media, whether it's the people, and these are the same people. Believe you me, when I start with the 3 people on top at the time of partition, those 3 people and their lineage going down, if you actually go through the entire set of that lineage, you'll come to know why the problems are not only arising and happening, but why certain issues are under wraps, why certain issues can't take a legal overtone, and why people have suffered with so much of pain and angst and still not found justice. So time has come. We can't go back to say a Nehru or a Indira Gandhi or anybody else in that dynasty, or Abdullahs, or even the other side, Jinnah and beyond. But certainly we can make our next generation much more aware. History books are distorted. There isn't a chapter on this particular genocide even to talk about, right? But I would encourage, in case we have even small debates further in this series of shows, where we were talking about getting some issues for the young minds of colleges and school students to understand. It'd be a good point. One of the sessions, maybe after 6, 8 months, focuses back on this topic, and in a positive manner, we are able to communicate to them what went wrong, what ought not to be, been that way, and that is the way to develop a society. So I think we need to have in even the next 2 or 3 generations which we see alive today, to cultivate this habit to understand these issues. These issues are very vital for the stability and growth of our country, and that is where I feel it is important for people like Sushil ji, come what may in your life or as a community or a society, even if you were brought down to smithereens by the situation and the cabal and the forces that may be, you still have to have the positivity to have the eye straight on your aim and use everything, use the legal measures, use the guile, use the acquaintances, do everything possible to make sure that your next generation also has the same resolve to carry on. In case you fail to seek what you sought to, they must be able to achieve that in the years to come. So that's my humble request, and I hope, Sushilji, you will continue to be absolutely positively sure that the aim is defined, and you seek that aim with a lot of resilience. And I know that it's a hardship ahead. I know a moral lecture will not work for you because you are elder to me as well. But I won't certainly like this cause to be pained in angst and mellowed down or died in the years ahead. I would rather have it alive after 15 years for me to be more than a senior citizen and still be able to say, okay, this needs to be done more. So whether we are together alive at that time or one of us not there doesn't matter, but we must have that case on. So I will just urge you, everything is fair and fine, but with the full positivity which you have in your heart, you must go for this particular issue. Get people to join in as forces wherever. Youth is the most potent weapon we have today in our country. The youth listens and wants to be aware, and I'm quite sure if today if there were 80, 90 people on the show and fluctuating in numbers beyond that as well, these people would have understood from your voice and felt the pain, even though they were not even born that time. They will understand this case, and that is the importance. We cannot be Babar ka history and you know and the history of the Britishers. We also need to know the Kashmiri Pandits are a citizen uh, of India, and they need to be respected. Their pain needs to be respected. Their pain needs to be taken note of and accounted for, and somebody has to be accountable, even if he or she is dead today, who made those decisions, who were complicit. At least even if those names are in the open, there will be a closure. And if somebody who's those terrorists who are alive in the country still, they need to be booked. So that is the way law goes. And positively, you need to build a more amicable society, Sushilji, so that even the next generation, while they have the resolve, they particularly do not have to have a hate component going forward. Because I believe very very firmly that if you can subdue the hate to a particular level, but still get your aim, you want to people to be fixed, they need to be accounted for, jailed. That's not hate, that's legal connotation. If you want people to be more aware of the Kashmir Pandit issue, there's no hate, it's only propagation of the truth. So hate can be kept to a side. The angst actually also needs to be kept to the other side. It can't be mixed with the hate part, and we need to be positive to go in the future. So whatever you want to conceive, whatever you want to plan, I think as citizens we will be with you to make sure that we are on the path to seek that justice, which is long pending. Even if we don't achieve the justice, we should be able to curate a society in which you have the rightful place as Kashmiri Pandits in the entire domain of this country, not only Kashmir and everywhere else. And I'm quite sure, let the Samdan and Bhed be with the government. I think they will come up a little better than what we expect today. It may take a little time. I'm not going to go into that domain to give you rationale for that right now. Probably when we meet, something more we can discuss. And I would just request you to carry on, please, and not let this go, because you matter, and every Kashmiri Pandit matters. All citizens matter, and there's only one thing: right and wrong. You are on the right, you're not wrong. And anything which is left left leaning, like they say, for me they are leftovers. It's time that the country moves on. and we dwell only on the right of path of being right and maintaining that right. Right has nothing to do with Narendra Modi or his team. Right is right, wrong is wrong, and left is only leftovers hereafter. And you are not a leftover by any margin. You are the right. So if you are the right, you have to fight to make sure that people acknowledge that righteousness. And that's it. We don't have to hammer anybody's head. We have to take the path along. So I'm very happy. Thank you very much for being with us today, Sushilji, and we are honored. And I just hope that you will continue. And I don't want to, even smell your pessimism for the next 15 years ahead.
Absolutely. So I love to hear last comment from you, Sushilji, and before we end the session, any strong message, any message for all the people.
No, this is just a reiteration. First and foremost, thank you so much, Varunji, for doing this show, and thank you so much, Colonel Dev, for inviting me over and giving me an opportunity to reach out to newer set of people and share some facts, some perceptions with them. After all that has been said, there's very little left to say except maybe to reiterate a point that we may be in different corners or parts of the boat, but we are in the same boat. And we are heading towards a shared destiny, a common destiny. In Kashmir, it happened because it was a low-hanging fruit. It's going to happen elsewhere after they are done with Kashmir, which is why we need to fight them in Kashmir itself, which we haven't so far. Sorry. Kashmir is the litmus test of our will to, of our resolve to prevail. If we give it there, we will unravel. And I don't even wish to think or talk about that unraveling. It's just not acceptable as an idea. And therefore, it's a shared challenge. Kashmir may be a little distant geographically from where you locate yourself in your mind. But as someone said very aptly, geography is history. Now, no place is too far, and no conditions are too distant. They can happen to you anytime, anywhere. And mind you, some of us may be Brahmins or Dalits or backwards or Kshatriyas or Rajputs or Bauddha or Jains. We may carry these distinctions in our heads, but to the adversary, there is no such confusion or distinction. In his mind, in their minds, again, we have a common destiny. They also have figured out what destiny they want to deliver to us. We need to figure that out ourselves. And once we figure that out, I think we'll coordinate our actions and thoughts much better. There is no question of giving up hope or action. I am sure I'm not running the world. I don't decide what might happen here. But I am equally sure of the fact that whatever little capability I have, physical, mental, emotional, I have right to do my best according to that ability. And that's the only right I have. I may aspire for a result, but I have no right to demand that result or to, in anticipation, do or not do anything because of that promised and not delivered result. I'll continue to, we all must continue to, irrespective of what result may or may not happen. That's what Bhagavad Gita tells us. That is left to the person up there who runs this world. And if he has to decide whenever and whichever manner he will, we must do our job. And I will do my bit, with or without anyone. I'll continue to. That much I have committed to myself. And we all need to make these commitments to ourselves, not to anyone else. Let's see. It's an interesting fight. And with all my anger, disappointments, frustrations, and sometimes despair, I must tell you, when you get down to fighting it, I enjoy it. I enjoy a good fight any day. I live for that. All the best to you. Thank you so much. And may God give you more power to push this narrative.
This was very, very special. Thank you so much. Again, a very special thank you to you, Colonel, for bringing Sushilji here. I know it's your platform as much as mine. And Sushilji, with all due humility, this is your platform as well. Jab bhi aapko lage, whenever you feel like, of course, I cannot guarantee you a 3 hour, 4 hour, 5 hour, that I don't know. बट आज का ये सेशन मैंने देखा जिस तरह से लोग, और अभी भी अगर मैं इसको कंटिन्यू करना चाहूंगा, देयर विल बी मोर पीपल हु विल कंटिन्यू टिल मॉर्निंग, यू नो, आपसे बात करना, कर्नल से बात करने के लिए, यू नो, द थिंग विद कर्नल एंड अस इज, ये होता है जब इनका सेशन होता है तो इट गोज ऑन एंड ऑन. बट फॉर यू एज वेल, फॉर द वेरी फर्स्ट टाइम, फर्स्ट आई विल अपोलोजाइज, मुझे नहीं पता था इतना लंबा होगा, बट थैंक यू सो मच फॉर बीइंग सो ग्रेसफुल. इतनी पेशेंटली हमारे साथ बैठ के हमें इतनी नॉलेज, हमें एजुकेट किया आपने. सो समबडी हु वाज वेरी वेरी इग्नोरेंट, आई कैन से, यू नो, एक तरह से कॉलेज की एक डिग्री का एक फर्स्ट सेमेस्टर मेरा आज शायद क्लियर हो गया, मुझे ऐसा फील हुआ है. सो थैंक यू फॉर डूइंग दिस फॉर मी एंड फॉर मेनी मोर पीपल हु आर वाचिंग. प्लीज फील फ्री, जब भी आपको लगे नेक्स्ट टाइम, हम तो इनवाइट करेंगे ही, but whenever you feel you want to talk, whenever you need this platform, it's for you. So ek baar phir se thank you so much. For people who are asking, I have tagged his Twitter ID to his name. It's Neelakant. Please do follow. Please you know, follow him on Twitter as well. And I don't know if there are other social media handles jahan par aap chahenge log aapko follow kare.
Thank you. I'm on Ku as well.
Okay.
I'm Sushil Pandit on Ku. Yes. And I have my Facebook page. I'm there as well.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. On that note, thank you so much, everyone, for another marathon session, but a very useful and very positive session. We'll see you guys later. Jai
Thank
Hind.
you.
All the best.
Jai.
Jai. Jai.
Thank you so much.